When I was in high school, in the early 2000s, I came across a video on the early days of the internet that had me so shook I had to turn off the computer. In 1997, there was a supposed leaked video footage of an alien interrogation. It has since been claimed as debunked, but just a few weeks ago, I was actually asked to be on a program to help interview a man who has been doing investigative journalism on this film. Jon Stewart comes with a compelling argument to be made that this video is not debunked, but actually the real, authentic thing. When I heard this information, I knew I needed to talk to Jon Stewart myself in person. Today, Jon Stewart joins us here in studio to share all the information he's uncovered during his investigation. For some, this information might be shocking, but for others, this information might be confirmation. All right, today we have a special in-studio guest here. We have Jon Stewart. How are you, sir? Not that Jon Stewart, the other Jon Stewart.
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me down here in Knoxville. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. How many times do you get that? Like people, when you say your name and stuff, especially if they don't see the face, they're like, wait, the Jon Stewart from TV or what?
Right. Well, it's faded from the internet a little bit, but I was the #1 news story for like 2 days. This was back, I think, in 2008 when a charter school in Ogden, Utah, contacted me to be the host of their gala event. Now, I kept emailing back, are you sure you have the right Jon Stewart? Yes, yes, yes. And a reporter from a California newspaper said, I don't think you have the right Jon Stewart. And he broke this story on a slow news day. And my phone started ringing at 4:30 in the morning from people from New York going, you need to turn on the TV. Why? A 9/11 attack? No, you're all over the news on every channel. It's about the Jon Stewart, this school, high school. I'm like, I didn't know. I'm like, what? They're like, they thought it was the other Jon Stewart. I'm like, I told these people that I'm not the. I turned on the TV. It was Fox, CNN, Good Morning America. I was on Inside Edition. I must have done 30, 40 interviews in 2 days. It got to the point where you could not hang up the phone at my house, that it would be ringing from someone. And by the second day, I'm the third. Pro wrestlers love to pull themselves out and put themselves on the mountaintop. But I'm only one of 3 pro wrestlers in history that was on the splash cover page of AOL. I know that's a long time for that whole debacle. Yeah. But it was the second day, and I picked up the phone. I'm like, "Hello, this is Channel 1 of Manitoba, Canada. Can we?" I'm like, "That's it." It was just so it was a craze. So yes, I have gotten but I use it sometimes too. I remember my wife and I were in St. Louis, and she called Ruth Chris Steakhouse. We are totally packed. She's like, "Well, I'm calling for Jon Stewart. Is there any way?" He's like, "Oh, yes. See you at 6 o'clock." So I show up, and the host, it was a tall gentleman. This is downtown St. Louis. He's like, "Your name?" I said, "Jon Stewart." And he kind of just like surreptitiously slumped like, "Oh, this isn't." And they put me in a back room with a St. Louis Rams football player because the team was in St. Louis back then. But the people were very nice to me. So, I've used it to some degree to my benefit. But yes, it's done me well. And my mom wanted me name me Jon. She wanted me to be different, so she got all her money's worth.
Oh yeah, you have me considering changing my name. Like I need to change it to like Dwayne Johnson.
Right?
Like,
exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, and I can understand in the sense that like. You're like, are you sure you have the right Jon Stewart? Because it makes sense if they're contacting you that, okay, yeah, I get contacted about things because it's not like you're Jon Stewart that drives tractor trailer, every day. Like you, professional wrestler, you ran for Congress.
Exactly.
So you do have a resume.
Right.
And so you're just like, okay,
And the principal of that school called me. He's like, Jon, the teacher that booked you, she has ADD. I'm like, I have ADD too. So I really feel bad for her because this is me. I didn't tell you this, but I booked the hotel in Nashville, not Knoxville, 2 days ago. Oh. And I'm looking yesterday, I'm like, this is in, I saw Ville. Oh yeah. Instead of saying Knoxville, I infamously in my pro wrestling days, there was a TV taping in Rochester, Minnesota. The next day was Minneapolis Civic Center. I'm in Minneapolis the day before, pulling up to the arena, and the security guard's looking around. He goes, "Yes." Like, "I'm here for the wrestling event." Where do the wrestlers park? And he's like, "Well, when there's wrestling, they park over there." But he goes, "But there ain't no wrestling here till tomorrow." So I call the box office in Mayo Civic Center in Rochester, and Greg Gagne from the AWA gets on the phone. He goes, "You freaking idiot. It's Rochester, Minneapolis, not Minneapolis, Rochester." He goes, "This has never happened. I've been promoting with my dad for 30 years. This has never happened." He goes, "How stupid can you be?" And, so here I am driving down. And when you see me on the match on ESPN, my hair is like Zorba the Greek, that from the 1960s, Anthony Quinn. My hair is all over the place I had a convertible at the time and stuff. So
unbelievable.
And this is great that, I'm breaking the biggest story in human history but God uses, the most unlikely messengers sometimes to break some the most unlikely stories.
Yeah.
So.
What's interesting is that, all right, so you're here, obviously, we're a paranormal show, and you what you're doing is you are breaking one of the biggest stories in human history. And we're going to get into that, the alien video footage.
Right.
But it's interesting how, like, you ever meet somebody that you're just like, dude, what haven't you done? Like for instance, Joe Rogan.
Right.
He's been around the MMA and doing announcing since like the beginning.
Right.
He's one of the most famous comedians in the world. He was one of the most. One of the best. I think it was Taekwondo, or no, it wasn't Taekwondo. I forget what it was, but martial arts. Like, he was one of the best in the world. And now he's the best podcaster in the world. It's like, dude, everything you do well, and that's how I feel about you're doing stuff, because like, running for Congress, governor, professional wrestler, now breaking one of the most, amazing video footages ever.
Yeah. They thought I had, I'm getting deeply personal right now,
That's
but this sets up my life. They thought I had cancer at my freshman year at Memphis State.
Wow.
I'm talking about, "Hi, Mr. Stewart, you need to come back for another blood test and x-rays." This wasn't, well, something's wrong. This was like the follow-up, "You're in trouble." And, 19 years old, I had a friend in high school whose brother died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I very rarely talk about this story, and I'm not doing this for dramatic effect or anything. But when I was cleared that I didn't have cancer, I just had inflammation of my lymph nodes. I still think I had cancer because I had every single aspect of the disease, from my groin hurting when I drank alcohol to night sweats and whatever. So when I was cleared of not having cancer, there's a silver lining in anything. I realized that life is very short and can be even shorter. And so I have been, I was raised by, my parents were always happy when I was growing up, thank God. And I was raised by a wonderful woman. My dad worked so much on being a car dealer. I was raised by just a wonderfully optimistic and joyful woman. And I just know how precious life is. And I'm not saying that to, for dramatic effect. I just do. I just know that it can be taken away. Look at the industry I was in. 70 people that I've traveled with, cried with, laughed with, wrestled, made money with, shared hotel rooms, are dead. So I understand the brevity of life, and I understand that life is that precious. So, although in my opinion, I was not successful at a lot of things, I did try a lot to do a lot of things, just because life to me was like a smorgasbord. And I just want to, at the end of my time on this earth, say, I tried, I did stuff, I tasted life. I experienced as much as I could. I got up off the couch when a lot of people sat on the couch. I stood up for what was wrong sometimes in my life at the right times, and I enjoyed every process of my life. I was condemned in my early years, and you could ask some of the wrestlers back. Ask Jerry Lawler. I was condemned and not liked in my first year of pro wrestling down in the Memphis territory, because why does he smile so much? What's he so happy for? So that's just my personality. That's just I just realized that every day is a gift, and I don't mean that to be cliche. And I was fortunate to have that experience of thinking you were having terminal cancer and you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how, like, things set us off on life. And people see that stuff from childhood. A bad childhood can set you on a trajectory that you never were meant to be on. You know, I mean, I think about this a lot. Like, there's so much untapped potential in this world for people who never had the dream birthed inside of them. You know, they never taught how to dream about life. They were scared. They thought that they weren't able to do things. They look at the world as because we have a very centric view of ourselves. We are the main character in our story. And when you start feeling like the main character in your story is the loser, the underdog, the one that fades away and never wins, that sets you up for the rest of your life. And the crazy thing is, the only way to get out of that is for the main character to start literally believing that they can push that bubble and make it pop. And I kind of was there myself, years ago. But I'm really like living proof of that. I mean, I made a decision that I'm not going to be that, and I'm going to change the narrative of this character, and I changed the path. And everybody can do that, but I think that they don't realize it's almost like whether they believe it or not, it's like they act like they live in a matrix and everything's been preset for them.
Absolutely.
And it's just like you can make it whatever you want.
Right. I was very fortunate. My one from high school says, God, Jon Stewart's parents must have been, incredibly patient people.
Mm-hmm.
But no one ever told me no, or I couldn't do it. Not a football coach, not a baseball coach, not my religion teacher in high school, who, when I told him it was my dream to be a pro, everyone in the Northwest side of Chicago knew Jon Stewart wanted to be a pro wrestler. I mean, it was just, I was a great football player and I wanted to be a pro wrestler, and did it 6 months out of high school. I mean, 6 months out of high school, I was on TV with a character for Jerry Lawler.
That's crazy.
While still at Memphis State College, wrestling, walking around campus the following Monday, wrestling at the Coliseum. I'm not saying that to impress anybody, but to impress upon, especially nowadays with Google, the internet, there's no excuse for anything anymore. You can be anyone you want to be. You can do anything you want to be. If you're an accountant, but your dream is to be a race car driver, okay, maybe that's not going to happen because you don't have $30 million to invest in race car driving, but you're an accountant. Maybe you could go be a bookkeeper for a NASCAR team. And now you're around it. You're immersed in it. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
Go to Google. How do I be an astronaut? How do I be a pro wrestler? How do I this and that? And I credit not only other UFO experts, but I credit the internet for helping me on this alien investigation. I don't think, and I'm looking you in the eye, and I speak about my emotions and I try and be as honest about my experience, is honest meaning emotionally honest. I don't know if I could have pulled this off and done this investigation as successful as it went if it wasn't for the internet, of simply being able to look at somebody's, get their phone records, find out where they live, write them a card, knock on their door, which I've done. I'm part stalker. I'm Robert Bigelow's,
it's a fine line, right?
Robert Bigelow's assistant, Dr. Com Kelleher. I'm surprised he hasn't called the Las Vegas police. Like, this guy won't stop emailing us. You need to, but that's my tenacity. But I couldn't have contacted these people if it wasn't for the internet. So the biggest story, I think, in the planet, the alien phenomenon, is somewhat being proved to some degree by a guy that's not that smart, half Ric Flair, half George Costanza. I'm talking about myself, and that's because I had access to information. I had knowledge, or I had information. The alien phenomenon. Our government is covering up something, but I didn't have information. And the internet gave me information. So I'm telling anyone, I don't care where you live, where you're from, who your parents are, who aren't your parents, your circumstances, if you're being bullied at high school, if you're the star of the football team, you can do anything you want. Maybe not to the degree that you see it as, but trust me, I am living proof that a ding-a-ling with ADD, but who was willing to try, could really do some miraculous things with their lives.
That's awesome. I love every opportunity I get with doing what we do to inspire people.
Yeah.
It's been one of my goals ever since I started this. I wanted to educate people, entertain people, and inspire people.
Right.
Those are my 3 goals. And I think what we just did here is hopefully inspire people to understand that life is malleable and you can make it what you want.
Right.
And the people who've been listening to my show, I mean, we just came out with, I think it was like episode 580 something.
God bless you.
It's like people have been listening since episode 1.
Yeah.
They've seen the transition.
Right.
You know, they heard this guy who just started a podcast who was a truck driver,
Right.
and just figuring things out as he goes, to now we're building a media company, doing movies, documentaries, all this stuff. And it's just like, I wasn't taught how to do this. I didn't go to school for this.
Right.
I'm a college dropout that barely graduated high school.
Right.
You just do stuff, you know?
Right.
And I think fear is a big thing. And also...
Well, it's hard.
Very hard.
I mean, I want everyone to... I'm going to look at the camera. It's hard to be successful. if you're not have a trust fund, or you're not a sheik's son in Dubai, it's hard to be successful. You think it's easy? I want to watch YouTube. I want to watch ghetto fights, and I want to watch the videos where they shave cows' hooves and pull out nails of cow. I'm not lying to you. I don't want to go to my computer and write manuscripts and make calls for, it's hard. But if you can find the will to break through that, to spend 5 minutes, an hour a day, or 2 hours a week. I ask everyone, well, when they tell me, John, what are you doing about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are you doing about it?
I think there's also an anxiety that people have, like when they're at the edge and they got to take that step. And that next step,
that's right.
Your gut is saying, this is the step towards success.
That's right.
But there's also the fear of failure, but also the anxiety that you have of interaction of other people and letting them see the dream you're on.
Totally.
For instance, Tim Burchett, the congressman, who
I'm going to see after our program.
Are you serious?
Tim Burchett is the one that I gave this investigation to. I flew to DC. Let me set this up just a little bit. I know we're getting a little.
You're in his district.
Oh,
okay.
So I flew to DC. Here I am, a guy that ran for Congress. I've had an article published on my congressional campaign in the New York Times Magazine. I ran for governor of the Libertarian Party. I was on the ballot for Secretary of State last November. Out of respect, I flew to Washington, D.C., drove to his office, and handed his staff this investigation, this packet, which basically shows what this film was, who was in the room viewing this being, where the being was from, the designation of this being, classification. And I didn't hear back from anybody. And I emailed, and they said, the first hearing, you are not going to be called. Okay. And I sent another email. I'm like, look, I just watched David Grush's testimony. This this agent of the government with a Q top security clearance just told Congress people are being and have been murdered to keep this secret quiet. Do you think I could get some kind of acknowledgement, like hide in the open? Hi, everybody. This is Tim Burchett. Just a letter. Mr. Stewart, we've accepted your investigation into Project Aquarius. We thank you. We will, if we need be, plan on calling you in the future. And I understand the media, especially in Chicago. Oh God, Jon Stewart, the wrestler. He's talking about the government has aliens in craft.
Yeah.
But when David Grush came forward, I said, the phone's going to not stop ringing. I've been telling everyone this from the New York Times, Leslie Keene and Ralph Blumenthal, who I met in New York. I'm not getting ahead of myself, to Gideon Lewis of the New Yorker magazine, that this program is real. So when David Grush came out, I'm like, oh, when I go to Tim Burchett's office, they're going to call me in 4 minutes saying, get your ass back here.
Yeah.
Walk us through and I sent him still photographs of this film. I mean, this is very heavy stuff. And I've been ignored by Tim Burchett. So, the tenacity level that I have had, that I should have had in pro wrestling and in politics, if I would have had this tenacity level, I would have been Vince McMahon's right-hand man. I mean, I call, I stalk, I show up, I knock on doors, and I'm going to his office after our telecast to say, look, what are you not? David Grush told you no names, no facilities. He was, because of his security clearances, couldn't say this, couldn't say that. I am giving you the who, what, when, where, why, and dates of David Grush's testimony. I ran for Congress and I was a candidate for Secretary of State. The governor of Illinois tells everyone there's not a person in this state of Illinois that says a bad word about Jon Stewart. I'm not a 20-year-old in my mom's basement typing manifestos. Why are you not at least acknowledging that I came to your office, dropped off this investigation, and I'm going to go there after this and not going to cause a problem, but I'm just going to ask again, what is going on? And I'm going back to DC. I'm not going to say the date. It's going to be in October because I've given up almost on Representative Gallagher from Wisconsin. Listen to this, folks. I drove 7-hour round trip. This is the man that put in the UAP amendment for whistleblowers. I drove 7 hours round trip, again, out of respect, to hand deliver the investigation. Never heard from him. All of the Green Bay media that's doing stories on Girl Scout Cookie Day, told them, look, I'm a former candidate for governor. I went up to rep. I want whistleblower protection. I have no idea the kind of threat that might be on myself, even though I don't think that anymore. In the media, not even to do a story on that. And Rep Gallagher not even calling me back. And again, when Grush testified, I'm like, oh, Mike Gallagher's going to call me in 10. Nobody. And so I need to pay Tim a visit. But what I'm going to do in October is I'm going to, there's like 3 or 4 female congresswomen, and I'm going to ask them for their help, and I'm kind of like wrestling where I'm pitting the male congressmen against female, but I firmly believe that these female congresswomen like Mace and AOC and Bobart and Marjorie Taylor Greene, that they are they are not as structured as a regular congressperson in Washington, that they would be willing to come forward and say, look, this guy is giving us the time, the dates, the facilities, the program names that David Grush couldn't. His name is Jon Stewart. We accept his investigation into Congress. That's all I'm looking for. I don't have to testify, and I don't have to be on the front cover of the New York Times, but it's getting to that point now where, this investigation has to come to the forefront of the mainstream media.
Remind me after we're done recording, there is a connection that I want to give you, or at least explore with you, that might really help you propel even well beyond what I can offer.
Right.
So just don't let me forget. That's why I just typed that down.
Even Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Keene, and I'm not jumping forward. I know I keep saying that.
That's fine.
I spent 6 hours with them at the Midtown Hilton in August of last year, and 2 hours into my presentation, Ralph Blumenthal, I would love the guy to be my uncle. I love the guy, but he waved his hands and he's like, "Stop, we believe you. Stop." This, and they were just going through the photos, and Ralph was impressed that I would get out of my car, knock on doors like, like Dustin Hoffman and all the President's Men movie. I was an old school journalist. I know what that entails. It entails getting out of your house, knocking. Ralph laughed that I would put notes on people's car windshields. The true story.
Wow.
To get them to talk to me, to get them to call me. So they're like, well, the New York Times isn't buying this. It's just, you're not in the military. If we can get somebody in the military to come forward, you're going to be on the front time of the New York Times. They didn't actually say that, but we can do this story. And when Grush came out, Leslie and Ralph, and I've emailed them. I don't want to get into where they don't like me anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm a little offended, and especially that now my story can't even be like the debris for the New York Post or something, because Leslie and Ralph do freelance too. And I don't know what else I have to do other than rolling out the body, which I don't have, and I never will have. And so it's been a struggle, and to get up and to keep doing this every day. I think the car business, the automobile industry, politics, pro wrestling, it has molded me into the guy that I am now, which is I'm never giving up. I'm going all the way. Yeah. And people better, understand that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I think they will. And especially after today, because we're giving you the opportunity to go from the beginning,
Right.
the genesis of all this,
Yes.
and work it all the way up to current time. So I told you before we started, and I'm telling everybody now, there is no time limit on this.
Yeah.
I want you to just share in detail everything that you have been through and every step of the way.
Sure.
And to get this going, I want to let people know kind of just my experience with this film is taking me back to the early 2000s. And if I can remember correctly, I believe it was this film. But I remember sitting at my parents' house, AOL internet, dial up, and this thing called the internet. And I'm just like,
because it was one of the first videos on the internet.
yeah. I'm sitting at my parents' house, this redneck kid in Pennsylvania, not knowing what the internet is,
Right.
and I didn't know how to use a computer. I didn't know how to use a computer until I got to college, and they're like, "You need to use a computer." I'm like, "I have a typewriter." I had no idea, and so
I'm right with you, by the way.
I just typed in something with interest. I probably typed in alien or something like that to see what would come up on this magic machine.
Yeah.
And this video came up,
Yeah.
and it probably took an hour to load. But I remember watching it and getting so scared because I'd never saw anything like this. Like, it was the same feeling I had when and you can call me a wimp if you want, but when the movie Signs came out and that alien walked across the camera and they showed it on the TV and Merle gets scared and he jumps back.
Right.
That's what I did when I watched the movie. I was scared. I was like, I'd never saw anything like that before. Movies don't show these things. Like, it was just like, whoa, you know? And that's how I felt when I saw this film. It scared me. I had to turn off the computer. I didn't know what I was looking at.
Yeah.
And so this is the film we're discussing today. And you did a thorough investigation into it. You know the names, people connected to it, and you've been spending a lot of your time, energy, and money to get this information out to the world. And that's why we're here today. So I want you to kind of take us. How did you come across the video?
Sure.
How did you start taking it serious? And what were the steps involved here?
Yeah. Let me just give two real quick stories, because how does a automobile dealer and former pro wrestler and a guy that was running for governor get involved in alien? I've always been interested in the paranormal and ufology. Always. I wasn't a researcher of it, but I was always interested in it. I had two really strange, bizarre events. One was not documented. One was documented because I emailed Stanton Friedman, I emailed Jim Mars, and I called John Lear. 3 people. The first one was in 1988. Now, I'm 20 years old. I'm about to go to Singapore and Indonesia to wrestle. I'm in college. I'm chasing every young lady on campus that I can. I'm living in Chicago, suburbs of Chicago. Ufology and politics was about as far out of my ecosystem as anything, as finger painting. And I fall asleep, and I have a daydream, like a semi-lucid. Again, 20 years old, in college, chasing women, pro wrestler, bet ready to go to Singapore, worried about term papers. I have a semi-lucid dream that I'm the governor of Illinois. I'm looking you straight in the eye, that I'm the governor of Illinois on a hill, and it's like the scene before. This is 88, so this was before the Armageddon battle scenes of, I think, Lord of the Rings or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, way before that, but it was that type of scene, like a 500,000 aliens coming towards me and other people. And I remember the sky being red. Okay, for whatever. Whatever. Okay, let's move on. Now, just remember that. 1988, 20 years old, I'm a governor of Illinois fighting aliens. I think people can get how bizarre. And I'm just saying, I'm not saying that God did this. I'm talking about when you put something in your brain, okay, 30 years prior, be careful. Put stuff in your brain that's good. I want to have a nice wife. I want to be a good dad. I want to, put that kind of stuff in your brain. Okay. About 2 months before I saw this film, I think this is one of the creepiest things that I can ever. And again, I emailed Stanton Friedman to help me digest what was going on. Called John Lear. I had to pay to do that. He was having that service. You pay $20. You can call him. Just want to tell people that all this is legit. I'm not just throwing out. And I emailed Jim Mars. I call him Tex Mars a lot. He died. He's the journalist with the mustache from Texas who did JFK and ufology books. It's 1997. It's 1:00 in the morning. I am laying on my couch, like with my feet up and my back against like the armrest. I'm reading William Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse, very famous book. By the way, who in 1987 says that there's going to be a ramp up of school shootings and to take guns away. I found that very prophetic. This guy was writing this 30 years ago. So he's talking about, look, if the government wants to hone in on you, they can see, telepathically to some degree what you're looking at. If you are at their target, I'm going, come on. I know there's aliens, but gee, this is crazy, crazy, crazy. I'm reading. My pager goes off. Again, this is 97. I have a pager.
Yeah.
Look at the number, call up the phone. A lady answers, and you can hear music in the background, like a rave party. It's like boom, boom. She's like, hello. And I'm like, hi, I just got a page. She's like, I didn't page anyone. I'm like, okay. I'm like, who is this? She's like, I'm making this name. I'm Laura. Oh, well, is this your number? She's like, yeah, this is your number. This is like my private line. I'm the general manager of Excalibur nightclub in Chicago. Okay. I'm like, and you didn't page me. She's like, no. And she goes, what's kind of this 1 o'clock in the morning. She's as spry as she said, what's weird is that there's 4 people that have this phone number. My husband, the 2 owners, and the general manager. She asked me the general manager. I'm like, no, I don't know. She's like, I have no idea who would have put in this number. Nobody knows this number. This is my private line in my private office. I'm like, I'm so sorry. This is the general manager of Excalibur. And not 5 minutes, 7 to 15 seconds later, I sit down on the couch. I read the last chapter. And I remember the page was here. I read the last sentence. I turn the page, the top of the page, the Excalibur Project. And, I don't know if I've been knocked out before. Corporal Kirshner punched me in Japan, knocked me out. I relieved my bowels, and I'm not being disgusting or sick. I'm just saying, I didn't know whether to crap or go blind.
Wow.
And I froze. I'm like, this just happened 7 seconds ago. This wasn't 2 days later, and now I read the Excalibur. And I hate saying this, but on the souls of my family, I am telling you, this is the God's honest truth. But more importantly, the time frame. It was instantaneous. I sat down, read the last line, turned the page, Excalibur Project. Go and behold a pale horse. You'll see the chapter. And the lady who was the general manager of Excalibur. And I'm like, holy crap. What, and again, pages before that is, we can see what you're reading and, this guy, and it's almost like, this guy doesn't believe us. Okay. I'm pretending to be in a bunker in the army, NRO or whatever. But that, I'm whatever. And I got so freaked out that I actually emailed Stanton Friedman the entire situation and made sure it was Stanton. This was 10, 15, 30 seconds later, Excalibur Project. And Stan Friedman wrote me and said, quote, the mathematical possibilities of that happening, especially in the time frame, I can't remember his wording, is next. It's impossible, meaning that there's another explanation. That's not coincidence. And that freaked me out a little. Here's this physicist. We obviously saw that I was sincere. Jim Mars said the same thing. He goes, well, what do you think it is? And I wrote back, I'm like, well, in this book, it says it's the government. He goes, well, who else could have done that? Who else could have known that the next page was Excalibur Project, paged you to the Excalibur nightclub to a phone number that no one has? Who could have done that? I'm like, and I remember writing back, I'm like, aliens or the government? He's like, you got it, son. I'll never forget, he called me son. And then I called John Lear. And John Lear is like, John, there's 4 aliens digging holes in your backyard. Yes, I called him over the other day. I mean, he's so matter of fact, nothing bothers him. And he said, backed up with Bill Cooper said, he goes, look, they have the technology to peer into your thoughts or to peer, and he didn't say remote viewing back then, but I don't know if that's what it was. And I still don't know if this was the 1 in a trillionth coincidence. I part of my credibility as a journalist and investigator is to not make declarative statements unless I've got it. And people appreciate that. Not everyone on the internet, but most people appreciate, hey, this guy is just telling you what happened. You figure it out.
Yeah.
So those two, the Excalibur incident really made me think maybe there's things out there that we don't understand, and especially with our government. And it made the Jon Stewart radar dish go live, go hot and start spinning. I moved downtown. I tell this story. I don't tell this to impress anybody. It's 1997. I'm running for state rep. I'm a part-time pro wrestler. I'm driving an 8-year-old black Porsche. I got a boat on Lake Michigan. I'm dating this super sexy, nice blonde who's my wife now of 24 years.
Awesome.
God, that poor woman. We are living the life. We have a condo downtown in what's called the Gold Coast of Chicago. Again, I'm not impressing. I'm impressing pop people, just like when I was in college. I'm living this great life, and my buddies call me, hey, you got to watch this alien interview on the UPN network. I originally thought it was Fox. It was on the UPN network, it was an upstart network back then. I'm thinking alien interview. Again, this is George Costanza. Yeah. I'm thinking a weirdly weird-looking person at the Pentagon is going to hand a clipboard to a general, and they're going to do an interview for a job, and it's going to be on closed circuit. Tony, I'm telling you, that's what was going through my. So I have my potato chips and my in my drink, and I'm ready. 30 minutes into it, I'm like, what is that? I know about gray aliens, but this is brown. I know gray aliens have almond eyes. This has round eyes. It looks like no one's trying to hoax this. And I've been trying to figure out the word. And an internet person, by the way, the people on the internet have been awesome to me. I'm talking about just regular, interested people who have just given me tidbits and vernacular. And somebody on the internet said it's just so casual, so non-professional. And I'll give you a scenario later on about how I interpret that. There's two military people. Their shoulders are kind of getting into the camera view. It's one shot, one camera. Mm-hmm. There's no cuts. The doctors come in to tend to this being that's in distress. They're not in biohazard suits. If you and I were hoaxing this, I'd have them in PSP or whatever you call, the pressurized bio suits.
Because the question is, how can we make this look good?
Exactly. And no one's trying in this video. Now, how would I know about Hollywood? Well, being in the pro wrestling industry since '86, I knew about production and camera production, and I shot TV commercials, and I was around. I knew a lot of Hollywood people. I knew someone who was on the periphery of the Troy Duffy, the Boondock Saints group. Remember that the guy that directed and wrote Boondock Saints, and there was a documentary on him. I knew someone in that periphery, and he would always talk to me about Hollywood and production. And I'm like, this something is not right here. This is either the worst hoax documentary on the planet Earth, or this is so casual that this might have been something real. And it's almost like when you hear something in childhood, or you see something, in your childhood, and it triggers back years later, like, what it's bothering me. It hung over me. Mm-hmm. It's like being diagnosed with something when you're 20 and in your 40s, it's going to be the end. It hangs over you, looms over you. It's the only way I can describe what this video was in my brain. And again, to hang in my brain with this crazy lifestyle of wrestling and the car business and flying around the country to buy cars and running my family car dealership and part-time wrestling and running for Congress, the Jon Stewart fee. I mean, my life was, having two children and then a stepson and having a family and vacations. I mean, I did not have the lifestyle of somebody that was, that would hone in and have something bother them. I was, it was like my brain was always a duck's back. It had to be like that. I always had just too much information coming in at all times. But this never left. So I'm running for United States Congress. And let me just, I'm sure you'll show them the film a bajillion times in this production. Yeah. On the bottom of this film is digital overlay graphics. It's something I found out because I interviewed VHS people from the 80s. again, I hope people are impressed at least of the lengths of my investigation, like a true journalist.
Mhm.
I just didn't accept information. And we're looking at the camera. I just didn't accept information, things I was shown, things I was told, emails that I was sent. I vetted every single bit of information 3 and 4 times
Amazing.
to the point where Ralph Blumenthal of the New York Times went, stop.
I get it.
Okay. So go email Ralph. Did Jon Stewart at least vet everything? Okay. So it says DNI, Delta November Igloo /27. This I think is the 27 will end up being the explosion, the nuclear bomb of this investigation, in my opinion. So Victor, the whistleblower, and this is a 2-minute, 56-second film that was brought out by a man who called himself Victor, the whistleblower. And I will tell you the whole story about him. And I'm just talking about Jon Stewart in 97 watching this film. And he tells us that DNI, this film was made for the Department of Naval Intelligence, which doesn't exist. To this day, doesn't exist. Hoax, right?
Yeah.
Hoax.
Yeah, sure.
I'm running for Congress. This film starts bugging me. Why would you take all this money, a very great looking animatronic alien, if it was animatronic, why would you put an acronym of a facility or a government agency that doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Proving you hoax this.
Yeah.
I would have put CIA, FBI, NSA, Area 51,
Yes.
biohazard suits. You would not put a name and an acronym on that film if that did not exist. I'm running for Congress. 1999, I'm getting a huge media coverage by the national media because of Jesse Ventura's fame. And Bob Backlund, WWE wrestler, is also running for Congress in Connecticut. We're on talk show after talk show. The New York Times Magazine does an article on us. I mean, again, I was not running for dog catcher. I was a congressional campaign, the only congressional campaign that had national media exposure. I don't care what anyone says. So I drop out of the race because there's no chance. I don't have the money to pull this off. And Mark Kirk, who was the legislative aide of the congressman who was retiring, we became friends. I dropped out and endorsed him. He has a bus tour of the district, and he brings in a senator who used to be in the Navy, who was a POW. He's deceased now. They told me don't mention his name anymore until the documentary. Okay. I won't, but I think everyone, gray hair from a really hot state, POW, Navy pilot, senator, longtime senator. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. And Mark Kirk was a naval aviator, radar intercept officer on a EAB Prowler. And after he makes a speech, he gets off the stage. I have a picture with him, and I said, Senator, great. My dad was in the Navy. He was a troubleshooter in the Air Training Squadron at Corpus Christi on the F-9 Phantom. He's like, oh yeah, I should have went there, but I went to Pensacola instead of Corpus Christi. Tell your dad thank you for his service. So before we get back on the bus, can I ask you a real quick question? Sure. Charlie, happy, and the band's playing. Da, na, na, na. I mean, can you see the scene?
Yeah.
And, people are around us like, okay, come on, because everyone wants to take pictures with them. I said, what is the Department of Naval Intelligence? Tony, he looks at me, his eyes get like coal. He gets this aggressive look, and he's like, I don't have to tell you anything like that, and you shouldn't ask questions like that. Turns around and storms into the bus, doesn't talk to me for the rest of the day. Now, I've told this story to journalists and investigative reporters, and all their eyebrows go, oh, we've had that moment. When you tell the mafia hitman his code word for the hit he did in Jersey in 1962 or whatever, and or you tell a senator or a politician, the name of a secret program that they've been funneling money from, or, the name of their mistress or whatever.
I got caught.
Yeah, it's called the third rail. When you've touched the third rail, sorry.
You're fine.
And they said, and you experienced that. And I asked legitimate investigative journalists. Well, they all said the same thing. I'd start investigating the Department of Naval Intelligence. So I do, since we have time here, I do wrap-ups because I think it's really important. We all have ADD. We're a 60-second soundbite generation. Yeah. I do wrap-ups. So, folks, I just want to ask you a question. on a network that just started, that had no money, on a program called Strange Universe. Okay, this wasn't a lone documentary. This was a documentary special on a program. Listen to me. I'm not trying to beguile you or convince you. Just listen to me. It is my follow-up stories that will make you go, with my investigation, not the information that we're showing you. Very important. On a program that they didn't pay the people for the first 4 episodes, Strange Universe. I have been told by 2 people couldn't afford to pay their staff. This $150,000, $150,000 3-minute film, meaning the animatronic alien, if that's what it is, the crew, wardrobe, craft catering, rent the studio, manipulate this whole thing. 5 animatronic people. We're told it would have to be 5 people. That's how complicated this was. Can I at least say $100,000? People are telling me that a hacker, a side job guy, and I'll get into this too, a side job guy in 96 maybe could have created that for 10, 15 grand. So I have changed my vernacular, saying that would have cost 150. No, it wouldn't have. However, $100,000 production on a network, in a network show that couldn't afford to pay its staff in the beginning. Does that make any sense? Okay. Just saying. I'm not making a declarative statement. A film where their shoulders are showing in the screen. The medics come in like they just having a cup of coffee in the break room with short sleeve scrubs, okay, and masks, which is, I found out, biohazard level 2 in the government. That's all you're required, mask and gloves.
Really?
And a United States senator has just turned into Cujo, like a demon, over 3 letters on the bottom of a supposed hoax film on an agency that doesn't exist. No, I think we could stop right there to say something with this film ain't, and I'm using bad English, ain't right, and something's going on.
Yeah.
And I tell you what I think is not going on, that somebody hoaxed this, at least at the level of this film. And I remember doing the what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
Put it out of my mind again. 9/11 happens. I'm running a retail automobile dealership in 9/11, the 08 housing crisis, the .com boom, the recession, the 2 recessions, 2 stock market crashes, hyperinflation, cash for clunkers, everything. You couldn't put any more pressure on my father and I and my friends in the car business.
Sure.
And I'm not crying, oh, poor John. I'm just saying how busy mentally I was, having a beautiful family and doing all of that. But COVID happens. And Tony, for the first time in my life, and I don't say this proudly, I had some time off that wasn't a result of an injury in wrestling or, other than vacation. I was a workaholic, and I don't say that braggingly.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time I had some time off. And I remember coming home one day, and this film was hovering that day. That specific day, it was just on me. Maybe the COVID and the whole weirdness of the world, what was also weird in my life, this alien film. And I remember getting home about 4 hours early, and I was in my driveway. I can detail the moment. They had just blacktop my driveway. I was in a gray 2014 Hyundai Sonata hybrid. It just because it's so attached to my brain. And I'm like, said to myself, John, you got 4 hours. Let's figure out something on this film. You can investigate. You know how to do this. You've tracked people in the car business, and because they owed me money, not because I was stalking anyone.
Not yet. That's later in life.
Yeah, I became the stalker. No. So figure something out. Do something. Call some of your Hollywood friends. I don't know. So I'm like, there's this bizarre monitor to the left of the beam where the blip goes up and down. It does not go across. I'm like, well, that was something tangible in that video that maybe I can sink my teeth in. So for 2 or 3 hours while sitting in my car on the driveway, I started to research what that bizarre monitors that I had never seen before in my life, whether on a TV show, documentary, or in real life. What was I, 50 years old at the time? So trying to be a good journalist, a good investigator, vetting my sources, I find 3 PhD students that did the complete history of physiological monitors. They were from Sweden. In 10, again, remember when I said about the internet and thank God? In 10, 15 minutes, one of them emails me back. What do you got? They did the history of physiological monitors. I'm at the top of the mountain of experts. I send him the film. I don't send him the bean. I crop it out because I don't want to scare them or weird these people out. I get an email in 5 minutes. I've got this. Now, the government has taken emails twice off my phone. People are like, oh, wait a minute. He said that the government stole. They didn't swipe the sent emails. Remember that, people. If you have and AOL and Google have had problems with this. If you have an email that goes missing, a lot of times if you've sent an email back, that whole chain of emails is in that sent emails. Mm-hmm. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have this chain of these PhDs. He wrote me back. He said, we have no idea what this is. I, for the life of me, don't even know what I'm looking at. What is this? I said, it's supposedly from an underground government facility. This was used by the government. He said, I wish I could help you. We don't know with what this monitor is. It looks like a type of physiological monitor. Mm-hmm. We've never seen it. These are PhD candidates who did the history of physiological monitors.
So he knew that he was looking at a monitor. He just didn't recognize the monitor.
Well, sure.
So it wasn't like he was like saying, you cropped this thing out. I don't even know what this is.
Right. He knew that he was looking at a piece of, because this is another great story in the investigation. Great meaning it was an aha moment, which I think when I have an aha moment, it's happy. I'm happy because I'm having success at what I'm trying to do. So I'm like, okay. Now I think most people would have stopped right there. I've never seen this monitor in movies, TV, in person. I've got 3 experts telling me they've never seen this ever. Just, okay, this is proving to be that this might be real. I didn't stop there. I found out through the internet that the only 2 companies making physiological monitors in the 80s and 90s, when this film was supposedly taken or shot, was Hewlett-Packard and Space Labs, not to be confused with SpaceX, Space Labs, who did physiological monitors for NASA. Remember what I'm telling you. Space Labs did physiological monitors with NASA. Now, I get this mixed up. Who the cranky old guy I talked to, I said he was from Hewlett-Packard. I look back at my emails. He was from Space Labs. So I call Hewlett-Packard. I asked for the physiological engineering department because these people would know everything. They've seen concepts and drawing board sketches. And I get a guy on the phone. I tell him exactly what was going on. He said, send it to me. Send it to him. Same thing as the PhD people. I have never seen this before. I'm like, how long have you been doing this? I've been developing physiological monitors for 20 plus years. I said, and you've never seen this. He's like, no, and I don't understand why. And there's a scientific name. Again, this is my ADD. I've had so much information. There's a scientific name for the blip that usually goes across. He said that doesn't make sense why that would stand alone because that's not monitoring a human, like a human heartbeat. Like it has to move because it's mimicking like the rhythm of our respiratory system. If I'm hatcheting this, forgive me. I'm just kind of extrapolating what he told me on the phone 5 years ago. It's a great story. Now I call Space Labs. Same thing. Can I have the physiological monitor engineering department? Young man answers. Said, I'm a researcher. I'm a documentarian, which I wasn't at the time. But what do you tell people? Hi, I'm a used car dealer, ex-pro wrestler. I'm studying aliens. Can I talk to somebody? Yes. I'm talking like a South Side Chicago guy. Forgive me. So the in a Seinfeld moment, he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'm sorry. I said, is there anyone there in your department I skipped forward. I'm sorry. Is there anyone there in your department that's, been there forever? Nobody talks to him because he's cranky. He's probably got a back office and everyone leaves him alone. Tony, my right hand to God. He goes, oh, yeah, sure. Hold on. And you're the it's like, the stand gets, you hear the elevator music on the phone. Well, girl from Ipanema. And I'm doing the Jerry Seinfeld, like the George Costanza, like, this is working. I can't believe this is happening. And you get a hello. I'm like, oh, okay.
He really is cranky.
He is cranky. But I knew this from being 50 years old. All the cranky car salesmen and pro wrestlers, I know what men are like who have a lot of experience, who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. I know what they're like. They hate their jobs. They hate that they're there. They're miserable. And I just, and I got one.
Yeah.
So this wasn't like I was pulling, this was my experience of what, but usually that cranky salesman, that cranky pro wrestler who's 60, they know more than anyone, right?
Yeah.
So he gets on the phone. Hello. I'm like, oh, hi, sir. My name is Jon Stewart. I'm a documentarian and a researcher from Chicago. And he's like, yeah. I said, I've got a film of a really bizarre, I think, physiological monitor. And no one can tell me what this is. And would you mind taking a look at it? And he said, of course. Did the same thing, handed him the cropped video of it. Again, thank God for the internet. Thank God for iPhone. You could do stuff like this. And he's like, well, call me back in 5 minutes. And I called him back in 5 minutes. He's like, yeah, I'm looking at it. He goes, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at. This is a guy in the physiological monitoring engineering department of Space Labs who made monitors for NASA. He goes, I don't know what I'm looking at. Where is this from? I said, supposedly, just bear with me here because I feel really weird saying this. And that was another thing I can tell your viewing audience, the bizarreness and the creepiness and the uncomfortableness of being on the phone for 5 years, telling widows that your husband might be involved with aliens, telling PhD people or telling, regular people that this is about aliens was very uncomfortable to me.
Sure.
So I said, this was supposedly taken from an underground government facility. And I'm telling you the truth, sir. It was sent to me. And he goes, I've never seen this. I said, well, how long have you been doing this? He said, 40 years. I said, you mean to tell me since the 70s at trade shows, amongst your colleagues, amongst people at NASA, a monitor that just the blip went up and down was never on the drawing board? Or he said, never. And he said, the same thing as like Hewlett Packard. Why would you do this? Why?
Why would you do this?
Sorry. Why would somebody make a monitor with a blip? That was the thing with both of these, with these experts. Why is the blip standing still? So he said, again, this is the, one of the incredible bombshells of this investigation. He said, well, if it is real, and it was made by the government, so you say it might be a one-off. I'm like, what's a one-off? Oh, I'm getting somewhere. I know how to talk to people. I'm getting somewhere. One-off. I remember I had like this reporter pad in my car and I'm writing one-off. He's like, well, in any kind of application, if you need to figure out something, let's say I'm looking for gold and I want to find gold in the ground, I would create a gold detector. If I was an engineer and I wanted to dig a well and I would create, and there was nothing there to dig a well to find water, I would devise and create a device to do that. And I'm like, I said, do you mind if I say something? He's like, no. And I said, if you had an off-planet alien and he had a weird biology and he didn't have a traditional heart and lung, would you make a one-of physiological monitor to monitor that biological system of the being? Tony? Sure, I would. Again, I'm like, I'm laughing because it was a happy moment. I was like Seinfeld. I'm like, what? I'm like, you would. He's like, well, of course. If that guy didn't have a regular heart and lung, like you're telling me, yeah, I guess you'd have to devise something like that. Doesn't hang up on me. Doesn't call me crazy. Remember that, because no one has to this day in 5 years hung up on me, called me crazy. And I said, so you have never seen this? You have no idea why the blip goes up and down? He goes, no, I don't. He goes, but I would think that if you had to do something this specialized, you would make a one-off. Oh my God. Thank you. I'm like, thank you. Thank you so much. So, we have this terribly hoaxed video, the United States Senator, a Department of Navy that doesn't exist. And I have 5, because it was 3 PhDs, Hewlett-Packard Space Labs, 5 experts in the world, in my opinion, on physiological monitors telling me that son of a bitch has never been made, is not in mass production. They've never seen it. They've never seen drawings about it. They've never heard of a concept about it. Nowhere. So I'm asking your viewers, because this documentary was done by a second-tier video production company in a strip mall in Southern California. Do you think that a second-tier video production company that was putting out the Tim Conway golf dwarf, he called himself, he was on his knees, he pretended to be a little person, a company that was putting out a VHS, selling a VHS tape of Tim Conway as Dorf, the golfer, would created the most high-tech physiological monitor known to man, an animatronic doll that FX people said, whoever did this should be working with Spielberg. Does it make sense?
No.
I'm not asking people to believe anything. I'm just asking people, and do this for my entire interview. Does all of that make sense? Because it doesn't make sense to me at all. And that is when I decided, this was the start of COVID, which I got twice, by the way, to put the pedal to the metal with this investigation. Now, I've always been asking some questions here and there about it, or interested, or looking on the internet, but this was now the pedal to the metal investigation. So, and I have a list here because this is how many points of interest. So, and since we have time here and you want to know the whole story, let's do it. So we have a famed Chicago police sergeant that was a customer of ours. His name is Bill Giaconetti, and I know you won't mind me talking about him. And he comes into the office one day, and this is about a week after this all happened, and I am going to start investigating it. He's famous for finding missing person cases in Chicago. He CBS Sunday Morning interviewed him about the '68 Democratic Convention riots because he was there. Just a great, hard-nosed Chicago detective, in his late 70s. And I didn't tell him what I was investigating. I said, "Mr. Giaconetti, I'm doing something. I'm going to start investigating something on my own, and you're an expert. Tell me one thing." And I'll never forget this moment. He looked at me, and he's an old cop, so and he sits like this, and he looked up, and he's got these blue eyes, and he's like, "Don't ever," and I don't care who they are, from the President of the United States down to the garbage man, "don't ever discount human beings' desire to want to talk." And I thought that was profound. And if you want to talk about something that blankets my investigation, that's it. You approach someone, and this is why I think I was somewhat successful, and why people came to me, because I hope this comes through in my interview. I try to be as sincere as possible. I use a little humor. I never once in 5 years did gotcha questions with ex-military people. Oh, no. It was just, "Hi, please, hi, kiss your ring. Can you just help me?" I must have said, "Can you help me?" 80 times in 5 years. And that was the start of this investigation. Never underestimate anyone's desire to want to talk to you. So then I emailed Chad Kalick, who is the documentary maker of the film Mr. No Face, who they think he filmed a gray alien in a abandoned facility, I believe, in Australia. And he's just a great guy. Just a great guy. Again, you go subservient. This guy's a highly respected documentarian. And I said, "Chad, here's what I'm doing." And he's like, "Jon, I just want to warn you." He goes, "Jon, I studied the paranormal for over 20 years. Nothing ever happened with my family, my wife, in my life. Nothing." It's Chad Kalick. This guy is about as serious as they get. He said, "Jon, the first week that I started researching gray aliens, my life electronically went haywire. And he goes, I'm just warning you that you might experience this too. And don't be weirded out, but I can't explain it. But from alarms going off to, servers going down, you name it. That is my advice to you. And I can tell you, and I will tell you this in our talk, that there was 5 podcasts, and I can name them. Redacted with Clayton Morris, Project Camelot with Carrie Cassidy. Ben he's got a German last name. His podcast took him an hour to reboot everything. Every podcast I do is, hold on, John, this is something. Oh, this never happened. If I hear that one more time, I'm gonna jump off a bridge.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about this.
I know we were, and I kept my mouth shut.
Yeah, you didn't say.
I didn't.
And I told you about the story behind the mixer board behind you, and
Right.
my wires are going crazy right now because you're saying that he told you that when you start investigating aliens and grays, electronics go crazy.
Right.
There's a strong opinion. The person that was talking to me when my mixer board got fried.
I'm sorry, I have a terse look on my face, but it's really I'm getting triggered.
No.
PTSD, like not PTSD, but I'm getting that feeling. Like not now. From the past of like I don't do creepy. I tell everybody this.
I got you.
Even military people. I'm like, I don't do creepy. So if you're going to get into this Da Vinci Code drama, this ain't a movie. This is my life, and I don't. And so I just got a feeling from the past.
I'm not going to throw you.
Okay.
I'm not going to throw you for a loop here. I hope not.
No.
But the mixer board got fried, and the topic of conversation wasn't alien, but it was fallen angels and other realms. And I know you're going to get into that as far as the other realm and interdimensional aspect.
Interdimensional, yeah.
So I just find how the parallels are really interesting.
Yeah. And when you have I'm not patting Chad Kalick on the back. He just struck me. It's just one of the good guys and a sincere person. And, okay, so 2 weeks go by. And I gather my family at the family computer in our TV den, so to speak, to show them this film. This is what Daddy's going to start investigating. So my daughters, Chloe and Kim Kardashian, I call them. I tell everybody, I investigated aliens, ran a car dealership, remodeled a bathroom and kitchen, and raised a black lab puppy. That's what I should be congratulated for, not proving aliens, and my daughter and sending my daughters to college, and oh my God. Anyways, I'm joking, of course, half joking. So they start walking into the room. There's 2 steps to go down to the computer. I've got the alien booted up on YouTube because this video has been on YouTube for 20 years. My daughter's phone goes off. I don't want to say this over, but my right hand to God. She gets a Snapchat as she's walking to the computer to see Daddy's alien film for this documentary or this investigation. She gets a Snapchat from somebody that is not her friend, that she doesn't know. And the Snapchat instant message is, do you believe in aliens? And my wife and my other daughter went, what the? And that is where I got credibility with my family. Because if your family is not on board with something like this, if they think you're crazy dad in the garage building a spaceship to Mars, you're not going anywhere. And I think you could tell I'm very emotionally sensitive. And, if I'm not getting the vibe from, people in my home, this goes nowhere. And right there, they looked at me like, holy, like this just like the Excalibur. Yeah, she's walking to see Daddy's alien video. Creepy moment. So, here was the problem, Tony. And you said this before about, doing something that you've never done before, how intimidating that can be because you don't know how to do it. I have written articles, but I wasn't an investigative journalist or, I have investigated people and, that's always been part of investigating paranormal conspiracies, meaning reading and watching numerous documentaries. that kind of interest.
Mm.
I didn't know how to investigate. And Chris Jackson, who's a former pro wrestler, lives in North Carolina. We were with each other one day, and he said, "Let me get this straight." And boy, you want to talk about reality. He goes, "You want to investigate a film that was filmed 30 years ago in 1991 in a facility, the most high-tech facility ever built and devised to mankind, and 90% of your witnesses are most likely dead. Am I getting this straight?" I'm like, maybe I'm biting off more than I can chew. I'm like, yeah. He's like, I don't know where you can start. I knew enough about ufology that at times, when you give it the Oprah effect, give it meaning any investigation or inquiry, if you give it the Oprah effect, you talk about it, you write a book about it, you go on TV or radio about it, sometimes that ferrets out whistleblowers and insiders. How many times do we hear UFO researchers get a packet of film, a packet of pictures? They get approached at an airport, so on and so forth. So I had enough acumen to say to myself, well, you know what? Maybe if I present this evidence, which is the DNI, the monitor, the senator, I almost gave his name away. Maybe I had enough information, somebody would let me on their podcast. And who lets me on, which is one of the number one internet radio guys, one of the best internet websites. He's like the Drudge Report for alternative media, Jeff Rentz, former journalist. So I'm going on a show of a former journalist, So I tell Jeff the story up until, I believe, the physiological monitor. And he's like, thank you for coming on. Please check back with us. Update us on your investigation. Let me just go back a little bit. I did Jeff's show right before Memorial Day of 2021. And if I'm chopping dates, I will fix that in the future. As my wife and I are in Upper Michigan, there's a state above northern Wisconsin. That's another part of Michigan. Not a lot of people. I have to always say that because where's the UP? What is he talking about? Is he crazy? We have a family summer we've had since my dad and mom have had since the 60s. My mom grew up there. As we're making a left-hand turn by the Whitetail Inn bar off of 139, my screen on my iPhone goes blue, white, blue, and then back to normal. And my wife sees it because it's in the dash, and we look at each other. She's like, "Jesus, what the heck was that?" So I go to look, and I'm like, Joanne, my wife's name is Joanne. I'm like, "Where are my emails?" She's like, "What?" I'm like, "Where are my emails? My red emails that I didn't delete from, whether it's from auto transport people or friends or auctions or my employees at the car dealership, everything to do with business in my life are gone." And I could show you June 26th or whatever, 2 days before I'm going on Jeff Rentz, my emails get wiped. So I tell Jeff Rentz's producer, he was like, "John Lear, that happens all the time." "To who?" He's like, "Oh, our guests." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "John, no." He goes, "It has happened before. Can't explain it. It's happened before." So I go on the Jeff Rentz program. About 10 days later, I get an email. "Caught your interview on Jeff Rentz. You spoke very intelligently about this. You didn't make up things." I'm paraphrasing. This was 3 years ago. And I am an insider. I won't tell you who, what, where, but if I can help you, I will. And I'll never forget this. I can nudge your investigation. Nudge, Okay. I'm like, interesting. This could be a wacko. This could be an internet person. It could be make-believe person out there, or, there's UFO groupies, and, groupies meaning people that want to hang around the UFO world or whatnot. So I'm thinking anything. But again, what I credit myself was I've always had an open mind with everything. Everybody that came to me, I've just went like this. Okay, come on, let me analyze it. A month goes by, he sends me another email. A month goes by, he sends me another email. He's asking me like random questions, about my past, about the investigation. He's not getting real deep. He's asking my opinion, which I was kind of honored that, it wasn't all about him telling me things. Lawyers call it wadaing somebody, get, little back and forth of who this person is. On my birthday, coincidentally, because I would email him back. I'm stuck. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what my next turn is, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. On my birthday, so this was contacted me in July. So July, my birthday's March. So it's like 9-10 months of emailing me once a month. Remember that, once a month. I get a thing, an email. The memo is from the horse's mouth. The hell is this? And I will just jump to the punchline. Apparently, he had a source in the Defense Intelligence Agency, which ran and runs the alien program. And I will get into that. I'm using broad terms. And he had a source in there who sent him the internal investigation of this film. Allegedly. I didn't see the guy in the DIA do this. I'm just, not making declarative statements here, but I'm telling you what happened. That he had a guy in the Defense Intelligence Agency who sent him, and I saw like he forwarded me this guy's email to him. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But you could see the guy typed it out. It wasn't I just want to make sure people, because have asked me, it wasn't a photocopy or a PDF of Defense Intelligence, the inter-office memo. It was, okay, I've got the file. I'm going to type it. Interesting. The DIA guy tells my whistleblower, very matter-of-factly, like you and I talking, please refrain from using my name attached with this information. And then he wrote the guy that started writing me the emails, he used his first name. So I said, this is something that I would tell a trusted friend, like, not, hey, you jerk, don't you dare use this. Just, hey, Tony, if you're going to put this out, just don't use my name attached to it. That line struck a chord with me, like this, wait a minute, come on. So, because I'm a dingling at times, I'm like, why have I never tried to backtrack this man's email to see? You get so wrapped up that sometimes you can't see, and I'm admitting that, that I've made so many mistakes. Yeah. I've drawn so many wrong conclusions. I put words one time in a witness's mouth who was tied to a person's name who wasn't the name, but I put words in her mouth because I was so excited, like I'm getting somewhere. So I finally said to myself, this is Da Vinci Code stuff here. I said, I have a program from the car business. So I, not the DIA guy, the guy that was been emailing for 9 months. I want to get that clear. So I start doing a search on his email. It leads me back, and this is where we get into where I'm asking you that this is where we get into you have to help me never to divulge any. If I mix up, we have to cut it out of the interview. But okay. I found out that the email was an email used by an institution of a metropolitan city. And so I had the ability to run the email. It was to a female's office. And I called her, called the institution. And I just don't want to, I called her, just said, my name is Jon Stewart. And I found out what she did for the institution. So I used that as a guise, and I won't tell, I cannot tell what she did. Let's say she was with purchasing, hey, do you still want to order solo cups for next week? Or it was totally different, which it was,
Yeah.
it was the question I asked her was based on what she did there at this institution. So I established she was a real person, but it was her email that was emailing me. Just bear with me here. So I'm like, a 40-year-old woman in a metropolitan city is email. She knows a guy in the DIA. I'm like, this guy that was emailing me for 9 months, 10 months seemed older, seemed like a man, first of all. And I don't know how I ascertain that, but you just can't. You can tell difference of people. And the vernacular and wording he used, you could tell that he was more my age or older. So I go back to my emails and I'm like, what? Come on, I'm missing something. I realized that every email came on the first Tuesday of every month. And thank God my father's on the board of directors and became chairman emeritus of a credit union in Illinois. And it's called the Open Meetings Act. You have to meet, if you're a corporation, 1 day a month, every month in a calendar year. And I'm thinking, again, I'm extrapolating because I never asked him this. I'm thinking, and I call him the chairman, that when this man showed up at this institution, and I don't think I'm stretching this, when he showed up at this institution for the board meeting, he went into his, I later found out, daughter's office. Oh yeah, used her email to email me. So there would not be, yes.
Wow.
Thank you. That was my Barnaby Jones, Columbo, Da Vinci Code moment. I'm like, oh, and I remember showing Chris Jackson. I'm like, look, Tuesday. I'm getting flush in my skin right now because it was a great moment that I saw that. I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself at this point, what am I into here? I just got an internal investigation, and let me talk about that memo because we're at that point. I don't explain this a lot, so I well enough on podcasts, and I'm going to do it now. The internal DIA investigative memo that was retyped and then sent to my chairman, who then forwarded me the chain of email, was a internal investigation about this film being taken out of Area 51. Okay? Just so we're clear on that. In this memo or document was, first of all, they called it an unauthorized viewing. Now, I am not the sharpest pencil in the drawer. If you think that I could make that up, it wasn't a theft. It wasn't a smuggle of the film. It was simply called very, like an innocuous term. It was called an unauthorized viewing. And in this, it said the film, and he was also giving the information to my chairman. So I don't think everything was officially right off this document. He was telling a narrative. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, Tony, this is the whole thing of how we move the tractor from one site to another. But let me tell you this too, and the date and whatnot. So here's what the memo said. This film was shot April 22nd, 1991 at 3:15 in the afternoon. The being in the film was a other gray. So you have your traditional grays, which have the almond eyes and kind of grayish hue skin. It said in the memo, the internal investigative memo, this was called the other gray. It also said this was a haploid. And a haploid, I found out, is a biological being that has only one sexual chromosome. Human beings are diploids. We have male and female in us. This only has either male or female chromosomes or DNA. Or I know I'm not a microbiologist.
Let me ask you a question on that, though.
Yes.
And you may not have an answer. Does that mean that they're asexual, they can reproduce within themselves?
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of different stories to that.
Mm-hmm.
So remember to ask me that. This was a diploid, only had one, and I found out that means it only had one sexual chromosome, not two. This portion of the film, what does that mean? I found out later. was for the Defense Intelligence Agency for an object located underneath the Indian Ocean. Okay. Interview didn't go well, or I'm using that word. The interview was terminated for momentarily while the being became distressed. Well, we can see that on the this is the only thing that ever pissed me off about the government, other than them taking $8 trillion of our money that could have went for daycare and minorities and, special needs people and, helping single mothers and $8 trillion to study alien tissue and build, spaceships. And I'm not being glib. This is the only thing that's ever bothered me about the government. Once the being was, I got the word. Once the being was stabilized, the interview continued. So this being is from that's abandoned, crashed on Earth. It's been there for 2 years. It's dying. And once we get it stabilized, okay, Hal, continue the interview.
Keep it coming.
No, let's not take it back to its suite, because they called them ambassador suites.
Really?
Yes, because they treated these beings like they were ambassadors from other countries. How can I make that
really?
up? Yes. So instead of taking it back to its ambassador suite, let's keep continuing, because we're the government. We need to know. And Victor says in the documentary that the interview really went nowhere after that. Let me give the rest of the memo. And again, I don't have it in front of me. It also said that I'm giving a lot of information away, but that's okay. That because the one thing, remember, I just want to find the truth. I still want to find the truth. I don't care either way, the provenance of this film. And I think that pisses off some people, like, no, you have to go, it's alien, it's real, it's written. No.
I want the truth.
Right.
That's it.
Dr. Stephen Greer's got a great statement. Don't bother with the facts. I know the truth. Something like that. Forget the facts. I know I know what the truth is. Don't bother me with the facts. That's the line. I just want to know the truth. You're not going to hurt my feelings if your uncle has this alien animatronic doll in his garage, and you ask me to fly to, Redwood, California. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I just want to know the truth of this.
Yeah.
So I always said to myself, because I think I believe I've proven Victor did lie a little bit in the documentary. I think to distance himself from, because I believe he was down in S4, the underground facility, and I think he distanced himself with the time. He said it was in January. His document said it was in April. He said he was the agent of removing of the film. This document calls that into question. And I always, you're weighed naked going into going into S4, which is beneath the S2 alpha complex. That's a bombshell that I broke about 4 months ago, which we'll get into. You're weighed in the nude in front of a nurse. You're weighed when you leave in the nude in front of the nurse. They know how much you ate. So you're not sneaking a thumb drive in the crack of your buttocks. You're not sneaking out a CD-ROM. I'm sorry, folks. And I'm like, this is the only thing that harkens that this was a hoax. There's no way, or a government psyop, right?
Sure.
No way you're sneaking anything out of S4. No way. But the memo says how it happened. It was like Ocean's 11, where the casino let the money go out because they thought it was going out with the Brinks truck. It simply says, when the interview was terminated, the United States Air Force cameraman was then escorted back to the Groom Lake Photo Lab, not Area 51 that I would have used if I was, hoax this. The Groom Lake Photo Lab by a United States Air Force police officer. It was let out. 3 days later, 2 copies of the film were made. One 3-minute version was put into a GSA burn. I'm reading this on my birthday at the McDonald's Southland Lincoln Oasis outside of Gary, Indiana. My hand's shaking. Well, I have to be specific. So people
at the McDonald's. This is unbelievable.
Can I tell Do we have can I tell a funny story?
Yeah.
So I'm reading this. My hand is shaking. Around a Chevy Tahoe is a 10-year-old blonde girl with black sunglasses and a COVID mask. And she is walking to me. I'm thinking like, it's the guy, like I was being attacked by the government. I swear to God, it was like, I remember like being, and she walked by me. I actually laughed about it. That's how paranoid this stuff can make you.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have a strong mental constitution, believe me, I would, I understand how this can affect people. Okay. So 3 days later, 2 copies of the film were made or processed. A 3-minute version was put into a GSA burn bag and removed off the Nellis base, or whatever technical term is for Area 51. They don't call it Area 51. It's the Nellis test range. I've got this all in notes. So I go on my iPhone. I'm like, tell us the GSA. The GSA does government auctions and maintenance and garbage. Who would know this except somebody in the, and so this 3-minute film, 16 millimeter film that it said in the report was, this is the, Hal, this is the burn bag. That's how it was taken off. How was anything removed from Area 51? Look, I must have talked to 5, 6 regular people. I just had a conversation with an 85-year-old man who did radar applications out at Area 51. He's like, even he said the same thing. The outside perimeter was Wackenhut, EG&G, Dynatrend. Inside Area 51, that's how they term it. Thank you, Sean David Morton, for correcting me on that. Area 51 is Air Force security. And this old man that was talking to me, he goes, John, I would know some of these security young men for 5 years. There were times they didn't check your pockets all the time, your briefcase, your purse if you were a woman, or you had. He goes, I'm sorry, but it was lax. He goes, and you're telling me that a burn bag was not examined? He goes, that is a totally believable premise. I'm like, okay, again, can't find anybody to debunk it. Like, they check every GSA burn. Nobody said that.
And that's what you would think. What you would think.
What, do you and I do that?
Yeah.
There wouldn't be a scrap of paper leaving that base.
No. And if I'm making up the story, like I'm thinking about all that stuff, trying to cover my bases. How am I going to get this out? Because they're going to check the bag. Like you're going to think about all that kind of stuff. This is amazing.
And a master sergeant told me, he goes, you knew who were the lax security guards. Oh, you can make a joke with who's having problems with his wife. And I say that, tongue in cheek, meaning you knew the person, the personal stories of most security guards, because you're standing in line, you're jabbing, at Area 51, it wasn't like as draconian as it was at Papoose Lake, where this facility is. So I'm reading this, and now it gets to the names. And I want to be specific because people are right. I haven't explained this enough. It then listed the names of every military person that was in the viewing gallery looking through the window pane at this interview. And it gives the 2 names of the doctors who tended to the being. And I'm shaking because when you see something that, when you see something that personal, or you see something that is, it's like having proof your spouse cheated on you via video. It's like seeing you have a cancer diagnosis in front of you. When you can visually see something, for me, I get a visceral reaction. So I'm seeing these names, and my hand is shaking, mind you. And I'm starving because I want to get a McDonald's, but my hand is I'm being honest. My hand is, and then the creepy girl with the sunglasses and the mask, and my hand is shaking. And I'm like, I've been looking at ufology for 30 years. I don't know anybody on this list. I don't know anybody. So with my iPhone, I start Googling each person. Now, I sent this list to Linda Moulton Howe, who's a respected journalist in ufology.
Yes.
Her first words is, my God, I don't know anyone's name on this list. I'm like, well, why is that important? She's like, John, when someone comes forward with something like the Thomas Wilson memo, MJ-12, or papers, when you have people's name that haven't been recycled in the UFO community, That's a big deal.
Mhm.
She goes, I have never heard of any of these people. She goes, and you Googled these are live human beings. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, Linda, do you see that guy's name? He's practicing medicine still in Connecticut. Linda Moulton Howe goes, quote, because she hates when I misquote her, that she goes, John, you have gold. This trumps the Wilson memo, which was a memo taken about, a meeting about UFOs. Sorry if I'm hatcheting that. So I know they're real men. So I go home and now I start the deep dive vetting, the New York Times investigation style of each of these names. So let me quickly go through them. The first guy on the list is retired Air Force working for TRW. I throw up the papers. I'm like, that hoax. All my work. Well, at least I proved it was a hoax. Chris Jackson, the wrestler, my investigator on this with me, goes, dummy, do you think maybe that, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun. I call Sean David Morton. I'm the TRW guy. Sorry. He goes, TRW? My family's worked for TRW. You might as well have read that they're Lockheed or Boeing or Skunk Works. They're arm in arm with top secret black projects in the government. Are you kidding me? That even proves more that is legit.
Wow.
I called Stephen Greer. He goes, TRW? There's more TRW agents sometimes on these black projects than there are regular government people. Like, holy shit. I call the guy's house. Yes, I called his house. Hello, you have reached the residence. It's like an old a voicemail. I haven't proved that he died. He's really old. Looked like a fun guy. Never called me back. I don't want to stalk this man because he's in his late 80s. Funny, he is a son of a famous, you'll never guess this, of a famous World War II veteran. Not Patton, not Eisenhower, not MacArthur. But once this comes out, you'll see, oh my God, that's his son. Now I find out this was a week ago. I'm jumping forward. A week ago. This is how this thing is metastasized. A week ago, I'm watching some mundane documentary. His dad was sent to Germany after World War II. Do you know what his dad was sent to? This is a famous World War II guy. Books have been written about him. Was sent to Germany after World War II. Do you know what to do with oh my God, I almost gave up his name. Was sent to Germany to look at and recover and capture and whatever the supposed Nazi UFO program by Adolf Hitler. So
Wow.
Isn't this weird that his son, folks, this is 2 weeks ago. I just found this out. I can't believe I remembered to bring it up. So here's a guy that was in the first thrust of the UFO program, and his son, who's in his late 80s, is in the UFO program to some degree, watching this being. But remember, an object in the Indian Ocean. I find out what he did for TRW, mapping and contour. So was he I don't know. Was he an expert in the contour and the map area of the Indian Ocean to help with the analytical process of finding where this craft was? I don't know. I don't know. But it sure is suspect. The next guy on the list says he was blah, 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 Captain Naval Intelligence. So I Google him. Here's the Chris Jackson story. He retires a vice admiral. Hoax. I've been had. Hoax. Captain. He's a vice admiral. Chris Jackson. He goes, dummy. This is from 91, right? I'm like, yeah, the film. So isn't the report talking about from 1991? Yeah. Do you think maybe he was only a captain in 91 and then 25, 30 years later retired a vice admiral?
Mm-hmm.
So I get his email. Living in Virginia. And I email him. Jon Stewart. I'm a researcher, documentary. I'm going to do a military documentary, which kind of wasn't really a lie. writes me back. Oh, I never forget this line. I haven't worn the jacket of service a long time. I don't like to put it on, but if I can help you or answer any questions, I'd be more than happy to do so. I write him back. I appreciate that. I'll, compile a list of questions. Call me, gives me his nickname. Yeah. So I'm like, I feel really uncomfortable. I'm writing this, calling you by your nickname. You're a vice admiral, but I will. He goes, I'm like, and since we're dropping the informality, what is the story with this fried chicken at gas stations in Virginia? He writes back, LOL. He goes, it's incredible. He goes, well, my doctor doesn't like me to eat it a lot. I'm like, well, when I come to Virginia, I'm going to take you golfing and we're going to go have lunch at one of these gas stations. It's true story. This is how informal we were. I haven't dropped the bomb yet. Emails me back within hours. And just a nice guy. Still is a nice guy. And I'm very protective of him because when this call comes out in a documentary, I certainly hope that his life, that there aren't CNN trucks out in front of his condominium. He goes, okay, what do you have? What are the questions? What's this all about? Again, I'm going to go play golf with this guy. Or, I was teasing, of course, but I would have. Go have fried chicken with him. So look, my godfather died in Vietnam. My relatives have been in the Army and Navy. My dad was in the Navy. I was one of the progenitors. I'm bragging now, of course, that saved the North Chicago Veterans Administration site. They were going to close it. Mark Kirk and I, stamped our feet, told the media, had a big to-do. Mark eventually got $130 million to build the James Lovell Medical Center. I was one of 3 people that went with Mark to the media, the progenitor of that very proud moment of my political career. And I'm writing this to him. I said, so the respect for the military, they should be on the top of the pyramid. I'll do anything for homeless veterans. It's a disgrace. Here's what was sent to me. And I sent him the memo from the DIA. And I'm like this, ready to press send. I'm like,
you hit it. You're like, I did it. I did it.
I did it. Like, that's over.
Walk away. Walk away.
Right. Walk away. Forget it.
Oh, that's wild.
And UFO higher ups in our community don't like the fact that there's been humor in this investigation. But I'm sorry, I'm part George Costanza. It's like, oh my God. Yeah. I'm thinking about the episode where he tried to erase the tape in the answering machine. I'm like, so I did it. Guy keeps me back in hours. Day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, a week, 2 weeks. I write him back. I'm like, Admiral, dude, I know it might be shocking. I know your name is on that report. Did you have anything to say to me? I'm not accusing it. I wasn't trying to do gotcha journalism. This was sent to me. Can you help me? Ghosted me. And Tony, I don't know if you believe this or agree with this, but in 2022, when this happened, in modern days, when you have this informal conversation back and forth on email and you get ghosted, I think that speaks a million words.
Sure.
And military people have told me since that email, he's like, look, most honorable or anyone in the military that is honorable is not going to lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
They will ignore you. They won't answer your question, and they won't lie to you. They know from boot camp, you don't ever put yourself in a position where you have to dig yourself out of a lie. And the military person said that is textbook. You just ghost the person because then you're not lying. You're not saying anything. You're not insulting me. I was ready. Kid, you're crazy. And you seem like a nice guy and you don't come to Virginia to play golf with me. You're a nutcase. I'm insulted by this, that you would even think that I would be involved in this. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, I got ghosted by a vice admiral who I was going to go have fried chicken with. Whoa. Get to the next name. Okay. So I'm talking to myself. I don't have an earpiece, folks. So the next one is, and this is going to go back to 27 on the bottom of that film. This is the only name I named because he's dead. Wife lives in Palm Coast, Florida. Rear Admiral Schaefer, nicknamed Ted. He was the intelligence liaison to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So when somebody like Colin Powell went into the Oval Office to brief George Bush, number one, about a situation in Iraq or whatever, he would be the intelligence asset saying, "Oh, Colin Powell, General, this is this document, and my aide over here has this document." You know, so I have proven that he was in the Oval Office on more than one occasion. Rear Admiral Schaefer, nicknamed Ted, seemed like in his picture in Wikipedia, seems like a great guy. Like you could just tell he was like, one of those, shot in a beer whiskey guys back in the 50s and 60s when he was in the Navy. And I gathered that from him. But to put a name, who's the intelligence liaison of the Joint Chiefs. Now remember that. And in the Oval Office, because the bombshell's coming. After that is the doctors. Okay. So I think I've established some very weird things about the first three names. Now the doctors come up. And the first one, I Google his name. He's in a lab coat with the thing on his office hours. He's practicing medicine in Connecticut still. And I'm doing the temple rub.
I guess I'm going to Connecticut.
Let me break here. When I told Leslie Keene of the New York Times about this man, she was so floored. She was like, "I'm going to go make an appointment with him. And when I get him in the office, in the exam room, it's Leslie Keene. I'm going to be like, we have information." And Ralph Blumenthal was like, "Leslie, let's, take it measured approach here, but that's how, this is how deep this thing is going." Called his office. I'm a researcher, a documentarian. I like to ask him questions. Now, I am assuming, this is my opinion, that when the receptionist said there was a documentarian guy wants to ask you questions, he immediately went back to, I'm sure it wasn't the time when I was a doctor at the VA. I'm sure this has something to do with the little trip that I made a bunch of times to a little dry area place in Nevada. I would be the same thing. Mm-hmm. When somebody would call the car dealership, "Is Johnny there?" I knew that was somebody from wrestling. I mean, it was like visceral, you just know stuff like that.
Yeah.
He called him 5 times, again, right on that stalker level. Connecticut State Police, believe me, I hope you never contact me. And he just never called me. Why would you not call me back? I mean, or his receptionist saying, "Doctor is not interested." Okay. But very weird that he's still practicing medicine. Second doctor, here we go. You want to go down the rabbit hole? Now remember, this is a 70, now I know the chairman's age. This is a mid-70s man who got this list from the DIA. A prominent chairman of the board of an institution in a metropolitan city is not hoaxing a used car dealer, bust out pro wrestler in Chicago. I can make a declarative statement.
Sure.
I think you would agree. So this doctor has a nickname, and it says it on the report. I Google him. He is a doctor. There is not one thing about him on the internet. How could you be a medical doctor, not have an award, not have your old office hours on the internet, still a golf outing at a country club, and he got a hole in one? Nothing. So when I hear, I'm not saying that they're true, but when I hear Bob Lazar, Dan Burish, and a lot of these S4 people or even other whistleblowers saying the government wiped this, that, I mean, I'm not saying that that's true, but that does go ding, ding, that does make me pause. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that those gentlemen are in fact the real deal. So I use my car dealership program and I get his wife, his second wife. Very short name. I'll call her Kim, but it was a 3-letter name. Very nice lady. Called her up. Again, you're about to tell an 80-something-year-old woman that her husband worked with aliens. You might as well tell him he's a cross-dresser. I'm not being glib. I mean,
Sure.
This is how uncomfortable my life has been for 5 years talking to people about this. I said, my name is Jon Stewart. I'm from Chicago. Oh, my daughter lives in the suburbs of Chicago. That's good. A little connection there. And I'm like, I got some information. Kim, nothing bad, please, but it is a little exotic and weird about your husband. I used his nickname. That potentially he was involved with, I'm this is a verbatim conversation, and I feel bizarrely weird talking about saying this, but that he was involved with extraterrestrials in a government program. Again, for the billionth time, no laugh, no hung, nobody not hang, none, didn't hang up on me, didn't call me crazy. Pause. I'm like, hello? She's like, no, I'm just, the light bulb is going off in my head. I do what's the light bulb? She's like, John, let me tell you a story. I'm like, oh my God. She's going to tell me a story. I'm like, I'm going to be the greatest journalist ever. I'm going to get a Peabody. She's going to tell me a story.
Tell me the story.
She goes, there was something that always bothered myself and our friend group about, used his nickname. Whenever we would go out, everyone in my friend group was either in Korea, World War II, Vietnam. Everyone's got a funny story about boot camp, about a drill instructor, some non-combat related funny story or interesting story. I remember when I was in Okinawa and, military people don't brag, but they'll tell humorous stories. And she said for 20 years, every time we were together in our friend group, blank would just sit there. He'd join in a little bit, but he would never, ever, 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 she said that 5 times, would talk about his time in the Army Medical Corps. And then I went, I never said Army Medical Corps, but it said it on the DIA memo.
Wow.
And I did not know what the Army Medical Corps is. I know now it's the unit where doctors are trained for the Army. I didn't know what it meant on the DIA internal memo. And now this woman has just proven, this 84-year-old woman has just proven a line in a DIA memo.
Yeah.
And she goes, that always was strange to me and strange to my friends. And they would always ask me past 20 years, why doesn't your husband ever talk about his time? And she said, I don't know. I don't know what he saw or what he experienced that has got him clammed up. Verbatim word. She said, John, your phone call just has made sense. And the light bulb is now turned on and I get it now. I said, would you like me to send me the video and your husband's going to be on the right of the beam? She's like, yeah, absolutely. I got her email, AOL, sent her the YouTube link, called her back 6 minutes later. She's like, it's shocking. She goes, it's him. Those are his eyes.
Really?
And I'm like, I'm talking about the doctor, the medic on the right of the beam, our left. Yes, that's my husband.
Wow.
Oh my God. I'm like, okay. She's like, here's my daughter's number in suburban Chicago. If you ever, need to follow up or get in contact and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, and I don't know if you believe this or not, but I appreciate you calling me because it's something that always bothered me with my husband. And I never understood why. I didn't know if he was, if he had some battlefield trauma or he saw something medically. But I just never understood why. And it caused problems with us sometimes because he refused to answer me why he never spoke about his time in the United States Army Medical Corps, and not a peep on him about it on the internet. I don't know how you can be a doctor into your 80s and not have one thing written about you in the internet.
Yeah.
I have got a program where it gives you, I've seen newspaper articles of, Tony Merkel hit a hole-in-one at the Knoxville golf course and for 1961, and they'll find you.
Yeah.
Not one.
That's amazing. So what this kind of goes back to the genesis of our conversation today, which is taking that step. You get to the edge and you take that step of being uncomfortable. Imagine if you didn't do it. Because like you said, you're about to talk to a widow and talk to her about some very weird stuff. If you would have just been like, maybe I'll just search online a little bit more and never called her.
That's right.
I mean, that's incredible.
Tony, my fault in the car business when I sold cars for my father. He's admitting it was a used car sales. Wait a minute. That we were going to bring that up in a podcast talking about his legitimacy. When my fault in pro wrestling, I was not the follow-up guy. And when I was in pro wrestling, you had to make calls, you had to send tapes. And I was just, don't call me. I was on ESPN. Vince McMahon said, give Jay Strongborough your number. They'll call me. No. So huge getting out. I'm saying that. I'm not saying that to talk about me. Huge getting out of my comfort zone, what I did. And again, like I told you in the pre-interview, if I would have been like this with wrestling and politics, I would have been the governor of Illinois and Vince McMahon's right-hand man.
Yeah.
Because I have been a tenacious bulldog that won't stop. Like I told you, I'm going to Tim Burchett's office after this is over to ask him what's going on. So yeah, thank God I had this program. Thank God for the internet. Thank God for this woman not hanging up on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I did her a service too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Like you provided this like some closure for her.
Some closure for her. I absolutely agree. So so those are the men. I went over the doctors. And then it said there was 2 telepaths. Now, let me just give you
fascinating.
Let me just give you a weird story about this, because Victor, the whistleblower in 96 and 7 in the documentary, and other people, a couple of other people, and I'll get to them, have said the telepath program with the government was a joke. Victor said they were getting people that were one step above 1-800-psychics. And again, when I hear insiders tell me how lax and lazy hazy the government was at times, it does harken back to letting a guy like Bob Lazar in the Golden Gate for a couple of months, despite his track record of owing people money and not having, maybe substantiated degrees, being divorced. His one wife killed herself. There starts to lead that there you could pull that little hair of the sweater to say it is possible that because they were so desperate for answers that the government started to get sloppy and getting people that were, I'm a psychic.
And I'm the government, so it's going to work out just fine.
And someone else told me that there was also a point to that, let me, it's kind of circled back to me. Let's get a person who we can discredit, who doesn't have, you know how many genius level people I know that don't have a college degree? I know a lot of them. Geniuses can't stand in a classroom for 4 years.
No.
Fact. Yeah. I'm not backing up Bob Lazar or Dan Burrish, who also claim to be at S4. I'm simply saying that genius level people sometimes don't get to, Bill Gates doesn't have a degree. So, is it possible that the government at times gets sloppy and gets people when they are desperate for a breakthrough, like Bob Lazar said on propulsion or interviewing with this extraterrestrial program, that they hire people and they get people and acquire people that if they go public, can discredit them. And what has happened? These people that have gone public, their backgrounds are shredded by the media and investigators. And I'm just throwing that out there. Is there we have an insider, Victor, telling us that the government hired, wackadoodles at some point. And I'm going to get to another point of how I went deeper on the interrogation program. So it said that there were two telepaths in the room. Then it says that a Joseph Yeager. Now this I found out 5 days ago, and it scares me a little bit because his family hasn't called me back yet. That a Joseph Yeager, a DIA employee named Joseph Yeager, helped facilitate the sale of the film to the third party. What would you say? It's Victor.
Yeah. I
got Victor. I told another researcher in Europe, I found him. I found Victor. Nobody else could do it. I did it. I researched now Victor comes back in a 2008 documentary. I'm not getting out of myself. Comes back in a 2008 documentary, The Whistleblower, and says, what is that? What are the UFO people doing? Nobody's researched this. Nobody's done FOIA requests. Nobody's proven who I am, Victor. Nobody's proven the provenance of the film. And the director says, well, a lot of people believe it's real. And Victor gets pissed at it. So they're taking it as face value. I don't want people to take this film at face value. Who would say that if they hoax this? I want people to prove it on their own. And he just says, UFO researchers, and he's just going on and on. And so I'm thinking, oh my God, Joseph Yeager. And Victor says he's coughing, that he doesn't have much time to live. And the second documentary was in 2008. And he's very philosophical, and he's talking about the end of the world. You see that he's coughing. He's got gray hair sticking out of his Donald Rumsfeld mask. And so I'm looking for people, Joseph Yeagers, that maybe have died. So I put in the search, 08 to 2017. I find a guy in Texas, died homeless, but buried by the United States Navy in 2010, Joseph Yeager. I find out, proud to say this as an investigator, even though this is not Victor, that he sold his family house and he went on a Nicolas Cage Leaving Las Vegas, alcoholic bender. I find out that he lived at a winery in San Antonio with a woman who lives in Kansas City right now. I find out that he lived at a winery, that he became homeless, was buried by the Homeless Veterans Association. A very sad ending, but buried with honors. I'm like, well, this is Victor. Found him. Yeah. I found him. About 3 months, 4 months later, after I got again, thank God I questioned myself. I don't know what made me do, because I have an ego too. And thank God I went back and always looked at my research. And I go back and I look at the DIA internal memo and I say, we believe, it brings up Joseph Yeager again. We believe Joseph Yeager of the DIA was Victor. Believe. I'm like, I don't know when this memo was created, because it doesn't, the person that gave the chairman, it doesn't give it a date. I'm like, what do you mean believe? Is Joseph Yeager not? I'm just telling people the truth here. Mm-hmm. So I get the director, Jeff Broadstreet, of the two documentaries. It's the only guy that's seen Victor face to face. I said, Jeff, I need your help. And Jeff's a little rigid. He's not the easiest guy but he's a straight shooter. And I like that about him. He's like, if I give you any information, okay, if I give you any information, I could be violating my NDA, and I could get sued for 25, 30, 40, 50 grand or future profits or anything. It's like, I'm like, can you at least, so I get the picture of, I'm sorry, it was a picture. Give Jeff Broadstreet 3 names to choose. I said, well, if I give you a little stipend, and we did a contract together, will you at least tell me the first name of Victor? And I give him 3 choices. He's like, those aren't any of those names. I'm like, Joseph Yeager is not Victor. I'm not saying that he's not part of this, but he's not Victor, at least the man that went to Rocket Pictures. And Jeff Broadstreet gave me the first name. And I'm like, oh, weird name, intellectual name, but it wasn't Joseph Yeager. Let me jump forward 7-8 days ago. I do another search of Joseph Yeager. I find that a man my age died in 2010 in his 20s. And he was a Marine with the United States Marines. And I'm like, holy shit, is this Joseph Yeager? Did they, and your brain starts to think, why did he die when he was 20 something years old? Did something nefarious happen to him? So I got his sister, and my name is Jon Stewart. I'm a documentarian. I just have a couple of quick questions about your brother, Joseph, and, lives from Philadelphia. Believe it or not. I know that
that's why your eyes lit up when I told you about Philly.
Right. So she hasn't called me back. So that is still a deep dive, but him and the guy that drunk himself are the only 2 Yeagers that fit with the DIA report. And I'm just wondering, but I'm not even going to say it, because I'm not even going to go there, because the internet warriors will destroy me. But did something nefarious happen to this man when the second documentary came out and the government started to try to find out, who to blame or whatnot? So that was just so there's another rabbit hole that I have to go down to. So now I have all this information, but I still don't know. And the chairman, obviously, in my opinion, wasn't military. I need now somebody like who's got a thesaurus or Wikipedia type mind with military. I need facility names and Dr. Stephen Greer, who this investigation is with in his disclosure project. He's busy. He doesn't have time to because he has facility names too, but he doesn't know a lot about this film either. So there's one person in the world. You see how I'm destroying things already? There's one person in America with the DD-14. I think that's what it's called. Your military papers, who has been at Area 51, who's been at S2, S4. That is willing to talk to the public, who's got verified credentials. His name is Richard Doty.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, 30 years ago, he followed his orders as a counterintelligence agent and told people it was a UFO when it wasn't, that it was not a UFO when it was a UFO, so on and so forth. He's in his 70s, and he just wants to come clean and straighten out the UFO community, and they're not letting him. And so my wife contacts him on Facebook. And my husband would like to speak with you. Gave my wife his phone number, and we talked. I did not tell Rick what I was going to ask him about. So I call him up, and I said, I know you're probably busy. I don't want to take out a lot of your time. Are you familiar with the 1997 alien interview smuggled out by Victor? Oh, of course. I said, okay. Can you tell me anything about it? He goes, well, I can tell you that it's real. It's authentic, that it was filmed by the government. Again, cupping the phone. I'm like, oh. But it's, well, Rick Doty. Rick Doty what?
Yeah.
If he was a counterintelligence guy, he would have told me what? Oh, yeah, they hoaxed that.
Yeah.
I know how they hoaxed it.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He said, I don't know much about the provenance of it, which I didn't really believe Rick at the time. I think at the time, well, I know that he knew more than he was letting on to, but I understand who am I talking to. He said, I said, there's question whether it's it was filmed on VHS or 16 or film, motion picture film or whatever. He's like, no. Even though they were getting into VHS tapes, that was filmed on 16 millimeter film. And, I'm like, okay. I said, is there anything else? I said, what about this telepath program? And he kind of laughed. He said, it was a joke. He said, but I just want to give you an anecdotal story. He goes, John, I was never down in S4. I was never face-to-face with an alien. I saw one being interviewed on closed circuit, but I just want to make sure I was never down in S4. Pretty remarkable for a counterintelligence agent guy to tell you, don't look at me for all your answers, pal, because I wasn't down there. Instead of saying, oh, yeah, I know everything, which I think most people would do.
Sure.
He said, I have an anecdotal story that I was told because I was the counterintelligence agent for Papoose Lake. And he goes, so I was briefed on everything. And can anyone deny that? Richard Doty is a verified counterintelligence agent out at Area 51 in Kirkland.
Right.
He is briefed on everything, more than the president at times, when it's need to know. Said, I have an anecdotal story about the telepaths. He said, Victor was right. They were a joke. He said one time they got a farmer from the East Coast, and it was ridiculous. Who the government was trying to bring in to crack the thought projection of these beings. I'm like, well, what is thought projection? He goes, John, from what I was told, they weren't telepaths. They would actually, you'd walk in the room, in your brain, you would hear, I know what your question is. It's about the Tony Merkel sign behind you. And here's what I can tell you about it. We had that built by, ABC sign company. And he goes, so the government called it thought projection rather than telepathy. It knew what you were thinking, and it knew your question and already had the answer projected into your head. He said, but there were two telepaths that were from a vocation. I know what the vocation is. I'm not going to tell you because the internet will go freaking, let's leave it for another time.
Okay.
And I hope people respect my my comportment. But he said there were two telepaths and they had a vocation. When these two guys sat down in front of these beings, they would start relaying the information back to a military person almost immediately. Like they would sit down and be like, okay, yeah, blah, not have to sit there for 20 minutes. And he goes, they were amazing at the information that they could process from these beings. He goes, let me tell you another anecdotal story. This is really interesting. He goes, there was one time where there was a snag in the interview process, and the being was saying, do you know where I come from? And the one telepath, not these two good telepaths that were excelled in it, but just a regular telepath, was looking at the general behind him, saying, he's getting cocky with him. He's like, do you know where I'm coming from? And the being's like, no, do you know where I come from? Meaning planet. So there was a language barrier, of colloquialism and whatnot, which I thought that was a really interesting anecdotal story. Not proven, but I thought that was interesting. And I could see that, you're sitting down and you're a telepath who's lived from let's say the 50s to the 90s, and you have all of this jargon and lingo, and it was really important to break, to really kind of listen and digest, I guess, what these beings were trying to say. But I thought that was a really interesting anecdotal story of, he's asking me, where I'm coming from? And it was, do you know where I come from?
Wow.
So that's what interesting with Rick Doty. So about to hang up, and he goes, there's also one other thing that everyone gets wrong. And he goes, even including Victor. I'm like, well, what's that? He goes, John, I'm going to tell you something that very few people know. And more importantly, hardly any ufologist has talked about this. I've mentioned it once or twice. It just goes over people's head. He goes, the facility where the alien beings were being interrogated was not S4. The overall facility was called S2 Alpha, the S2 complex. S2 was the overall site at Papoose Lake. It was not in the side of the mountain where Bob Lazar said it was, with hangars painted. And Rick Doty said, I don't know if there's hangars painted with sand into a mountain, but they're not at Papoose Lake that I've been told about, or visually what I saw back in the 80s. And he said the AHC is under S2 building. There's S2. It's like the administration for the entire area at Papoose Lake. Then there's S3 and S4. So when Victor and Bob Lazar say S4, yes, technically that was the 5-level underground facility. But bottom line, that was under the S2 annex. Hold on. I'm going to send you a satellite photo. So I get my email. It's a satellite photo of this annex. He goes, now I'm going to tell you where this is. This is southwest of Area 51. It's kind of by Papoose Lake. He goes, there was an entrance to S4 hidden up by Papoose Lake. Very, very small building. I'm like, Rick, this is groundbreaking. Rick, what is the AHC? Oh, that's the Alien Housing Center. The Alien Housing Center. Okay. What's that? Well, it's part of Project Aquarius. The whole program underneath S2 Alpha, John, was called informally the Alien Retention. Remember this, because this is the Alien Retention and Interrogation Program under Project Aquarius. The umbrella program was Majestic. Fact. I'm going on record one time. Fact. Project Aquarius was all things alien, extraterrestrial, meaning biological, and the craft and the metallurgy, propulsion, the acquisition, the life support of the craft, the navigation, the avionics, the beings themselves, their entire biology was all called Project Aquarius. He said, he can't. I said, we heard that this being was brought to the facility in 1989. The only crash that we know about was from the Kalahari Desert. I don't know if that's true or not. And Rick said, well, I can tell you that the crash retrieval teams, one is called Pounce and the other one is called STAR, STAAR. They're a specialized Air Force recovery team. These are the ones that would bring the beans and so on and so forth. And he told me the story about J-Rod that went to Los Alamos and died in 1952. He was the original survivor, the only survivor of the Roswell crash. And this Rick Doty just kind of struck me with this matter of fact. I've been around car dealers, pro wrestlers, and politicians for 50 years. You want to talk about the hyperbole and stories and bullshit, and excuse me for that, my language. I'm a lie detector, human lie detector, just because of my environment for 50 years. If you're a counterintelligence agent, you're not telling me stories that verify beans. If you're counterintelligence, you're not telling me, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. Rick must have said, I don't know 5-6 times. You just don't do that when you're a liar. I have a degree in counseling psychology. I know the schematics and I know the physical and verbal makeup of a liar. And Rick was not even anywhere near that. I was just struck by his casualness. I was struck by his ability to trust me and trust me with this information. I was impressed by the fact that I can't tell you that's still classified. Another story. Not many people. Rick Doty has had on his door out of his house twice by the government. I think one time they called him, one time they knocked. But Rick Doty, a counterintelligence agency, had can you come here? You can't talk about that anymore. And he just said, be careful what you say on podcasts. Make sure if anyone gives you information or passes you or emails you that you ask them, is this top secret? Is this stuff that's going to get me in trouble? Really like grooming me to like to send me off to my first day of UFO researchers class. And I owe Rick a lot of that, because I didn't know that if somebody sent you top secret document and you accepted, you technically could be in trouble. And I couldn't believe that the government actually admonished him on 2 occasions. He said, John, I just want to come straight with the UFO world, but it's like they devour their young, they eat themselves. He goes, they're telling it, and regardless of what I did in my past, that was my job. I'm in my 70s. I just want to set the record straight. And I can understand that. If somebody telling me the events when I wrestle for the light heavyweight championship of the world, and they're completely different than my whole day leading up to that match, I am going to get mad too and say, wow, I was there. You weren't, and that bothers him. And I could see psychologically the visceral reaction when somebody is telling him something or telling him that he's a liar when he knows the information. And Rick has been, Rick has been my go-to guy for vernacular and terminology. And what do I ask this person? And what is a DD 14? I'm probably chopping that up. He's been instrumental, and the internet went crazy with Jon Stewart. This guy got a new facility, S2 Alpha. He's been Rick Doty'd. I'm like, wait. So I'm like, geez, he showed me the satellite photo. Then an internet UFO researcher emailed me, and then he goes, show me the painted, the hangars that are painted. Where's the cement spaces in between them? Where's this guardhouse? Where are the roads? Where is this facility? There was a hiker out there. There's nothing there on Papoose Lake like Bob Lazar described. I mean, I went over Google satellite image after some, like, it's kind of true. And it's boding out with Doty told me that he doesn't know of this, where the hangars are and painted, painted hangar doors and so on and so forth. And then the S2, I started getting eviscerated. He's being manipulated by Doty. Doty told me 2 bits of information of this whole investigation. And it was after I got the chairman's emails and whatnot, because I needed somebody to go to. I get an email from Master Sergeant Munoz. He's telling everybody in a chat room on YouTube, sorry, folks, S2 Alpha is real. Believe Jon Stewart, believe Rick Doty, because I was there and I worked there while I was a master sergeant. He starts to lay out S2 Alpha, like Doty said, was the administrative center, blah, blah, blah. And we're S4, S3. People are going crazy on YouTube, like, he's like, oh, he talks about how to get security clearances, what the names are for the security clearances, how to get somebody onto the base, off the base, the processes. He gives me his email. I Google him. I Wikipedia him. He's all legit. So here is a guy that just backed up the S2 Alpha story, and the S2 Alpha is underneath is where this whole crazy, bizarre alien interrogation and interview program happened and flourished. It is now what we've been told, of this common knowledge, that the entire program has been moved to Michaels Airfield in Utah in the Dugway Proving Grounds, and Sandia Labs has a huge building on that base too. And that's where this entire Papoose Lake program has moved to. Some other things Doty told me, there were 6 dead beings in captivity. He doesn't believe that we have any living aliens right now, so to speak. And then he told me something that Linda Moulton House told me months later. He's like, you can believe this or not, but there are members of the intelligence community and the Pentagon that are trying to get this information out, that are trying to get a disclosure, something. And there is a little bit of a civil war. And I said, well, that's funny, because Don Schmidt, when I talked to him, he has a colonel contact in the Pentagon, said the same thing. He's like, you tell that your friend, me, that, we're all at the Pentagon. We can't cheer his investigation, but what he's trying to do is being applauded by people because we want it to come out. Let me give you a little quick story. This is really interesting. Colonel at the Pentagon tells Don Schmidt, you tell him, me. He's like, we're at a retail store, the Pentagon, and we're selling our products, and we've got shipments coming in, and we're doing all our business up front. He goes, but down a long, long hallway is a door. Can't go by the door. You can't ask any questions about the door. This is a colonel at the Pentagon. Can't open the door, and you can't ask anybody about the door. And in the way, way back, we see trucks and activity going in and out of the fence, but we can't ask anything what's going on back there. He goes, you tell that guy in Chicago, that's what's going on with the Pentagon and the other portion of the government that is hiding this alien program. And he goes, and none of us know what to do about it because, we don't want to risk pension. We don't want to risk career demotion, so on and so forth. I found that story to be very, very compelling.
Wow. And on that note, it makes you feel like it's only a matter of time till somebody's like, I don't care about my pension. I don't care about anything.
Right.
I'm talking.
Well, that's funny you said that, because there are stories in the underbelly of military intelligence and ufology that one day, this is an anecdotal story. I can't prove this, but it sounds copacetic because of what we're seeing with the government and the leakage, that a Army general, I found out that when you do something like a pathology exam, or you're extracting something, or you're doing a big experiment on an extraterrestrial craft or a biologic, that you actually have to get a written legislative order from who's ever running this program. And that means signatures. And the understory and the underbelly of ufology is that one day, before Lou Elizondo came forward, a general went and pushed the order back to the person. I'm not putting my name on something where they can hang me 10 years from now. And that was the moment, the undercurrent of ufology, where some people in the Pentagon or in this program said, maybe some soft disclosure needs to start happening because people are not willing to sign their name. So what does the government do? It puts everything, a lot of material, a lot of technology, biological material with corporations. And what can't you do to a corporation? You can't FOIA them. Now there's another story that's coming out last month that a CEO of one of these companies, like a Lockheed or Boeing or Skunk Works, or I think Lockheed is Skunk Works, and there's the minutia of names that handle these programs, that he's looking for a way of getting rid of the extraterrestrial material that they have in their R&D program. So he is not complicit with this, and he can get it out of his hands. So the eyes of the government or the media or investigators don't look at what this company is also doing, other research and development. So it's the hot potato. And this is the best thing for you. I think this is the best news anecdotally that the ufologists have heard. That finally people are saying, you sign your name. I'm not signing my name. Because when you think about the stories, anecdotal stories of the researchers that have been murdered, the insiders that have been murdered to keep the secret. You have a David Grush with a Q clearance saying people have been murdered to keep this quiet. At some point, a level-headed general or colonel is going to say, I'm not going to jail. I'm not going to Leavenworth for the rest of my life because I'm going to get blamed because my superior, whacked somebody in 1970s and I was around that boardroom and tacitly gave approval or whatever the scenario will be. There are human beings now, and I say human beings, morally guided people in the Pentagon that are finally saying no mas, no more. You will leak it out some way.
That's wild. So with this, I don't think we ever got to the DNI 27 though.
Yeah, I'm just
okay.
Oh God, this list is. There's one more very disturbing story that happened to me. So Scott Walter, he's with American Unearthed on History Channel, one of the straightest shooters in the world. Why do I say he's a straight shooter and a good guy? He has turned down TV projects where evidence would be planted at times and they push the gray area. And he turned down a lot of money to say, I'm not going to be part of that. That to me is a straight shooter.
Yeah. I've heard the same stories, by the way.
Oh, good. That's awesome. So I contact him because he wants to start doing interested in ufology. And we're going back and forth. I sent him the 3-minute film and he said, hold on. I'm going to, because it's the famous story that somebody in intelligence has befriended Scott Walter. And the guy's code name is called Holden, the literary person from Catcher in the Rye. Scott writes me back like 5 minutes. It's real. Like, how do you know it's real? Because I just sent it to Holden. Who's Holden? He goes, well, that's the guy that blah, 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 blah. And that's all I can say. He just said it's real. Like, oh, whoa. So for 9-10 months, I work on Scott Walter. The stalker Jon Stewart. Please get me an interview with this guy. Get me an interview with this guy. He won't tell me where he is, what he does. Scott's like, he's a verified military person. He's been to Scott's house, shown him all of his forms, badges, whatever. Finally get Scott to have this guy agree to call me. And his name's Holden. Sounded like he was in his 30s, very intelligent, very mild-mannered. He works for the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, NAISC, National Air and Space Intelligence Center out of Wright-Patterson in Ohio. I mean, Wright-Patterson is, you might as well be at, if the ufology world is 9/11, Wright-Patterson is the Twin Towers.
Right.
And he calls me. I'm up at our summer home, and he's very kind and very nice. And he's like, the video, it might have been done by the government as a training video. I'm like, nah. I'm like, if the being didn't have, respiratory issue and there was no like the doctor showing this is what you do with a cotton swab,
Special monitor, you know what I mean?
Right. I'm like, and he's like, no, he goes, I'm just telling you that we do magic. Now Greer used the same terminology, that the government will do things just to decredit people, he said that the government will do something so 20 years they can say, yes. There was a crash in Chicago. We showed it to you on the leaked film, but we made it up ourselves. But that's the only way we could show you what the crash was about. But a crash should happen, so it's kind of like a weird disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, well, let me give this video. Ask some people in my unit. Let's plan on calling each other after Thanksgiving. Talk to each other after Thanksgiving. He said, He contradicted himself. He said, one guy thinks it's fake, but two guys told me that it's blacklisted by the Pentagon. And I'm like, well, Holden, that doesn't make sense. Why is a hoaxed video blacklisted by the Pentagon? And you could see him like, oh, yeah, well, I'm just saying, like, just telling you what one guy said. And I'm like, why would two people, intelligence operatives, tell him that film is blacklisted? So he started telling me about the film, biological makeup of the coating of these of the light lenses that they put on their eyes, and that they're sensitive to light and they have to use these lenses. But then he tells me the bombshell. And, I can't believe that it has not circulated more in the UFO community. He goes, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone, and it is not out there anywhere on the internet. The new designation of extraterrestrials by the government. Like, you kidding me? You're gonna tell me this? He's like, yeah. He goes, yes. I'm like, well, what is it? He goes, it's saber. I'm like a sword? He said, like a sword. SABER. Nowhere on the internet. This has never been talked about. I said, what does that stand for? He said, that is the new designation, synthetic astrobiological extraterrestrial races. Saber. I've told a couple of people this. I would think that this would have gone out like it's, like it's wildfire. I doesn't matter to me whether it does or it doesn't. I had an intelligence person tell me this. And I said, Holden, could I put you on camera in silhouette for a documentary and ask you questions? He's like, well, if my CO is willing to do it, I will do it. Voice altered, in silhouette. You'd have to come to Wright-Patterson and you have to send me the questionnaire. I said, well, how do I send it to your CO? He goes, just put my code name, put to the CO of, and he told me the designation. And I said, list of questionnaires for potential documentary. And these questions were explosive. Has the government had any interaction with extraterrestrial off-planet beings since 1900? They were explosive. Has Wright-Patterson ever held biological extraterrestrial material? A week goes, he goes, I'll call you this afternoon. Day 2, 3, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I text Scott. I'm like, why? Holden hasn't called me back. He's like, John, this guy travels. He's very busy. Just no problem. Boom, 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 boom. I think I wished him happy St. Patrick's Day or something because it was after Thanksgiving. I'm like, hey, Holden, want to let you know, hey, happy St. Patrick's Day. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Give me a call. Let me know if we're going to do this interview. We're into like April. And I must have called Scott Walt, texted Scott 3 or 4 times. I finally said, Scott, this is ridiculous. I'm a grown man. He's a grown man. Is he in trouble? And most importantly, am I in trouble? This guy has ghosted me. We were going through a documentary process of getting him on camera, and he ghosted me. Not an hour later, Holden texts me. Here is this nice, fun-loving guy. Fun-loving, meaning he was just a nice man, spoke kind, used soft words. I get this terse text. I knew right away he wasn't the progenitor of it. Somebody, right. You send this. Yeah. I've been ordered, and I'm paraphrasing, folks. I have been ordered by people higher than my CO to cease and desist all contact with you. You are no longer allowed to text me. I am no longer to communicate with you. You are to destroy any notes you took of our conversations. You are to destroy the questionnaire that you sent me. I will not be doing appearing in your documentary. And under DOD VV75219, all this weird legal nomenclature. That's what I would describe it. You are hereby ordered to destroy this text. This was on Signal app. Destroy this text. You are not to copy, paste, to transmit this to anyone under violation of Defense Department order so, and we are never to have contact again. What's the wrap up? I just want to know something. Why is the Department of Defense and the Pentagon telling a guy from Wright-Patterson to cease contact with a used car dealer, bust out pro wrestler? Let me say it, a politician that's got a supposed hoaxed video. Why? I think I know. but I don't want to have declarative statements. Let me just we'll give one more quick thing. I've done about 8 FOIAs. I will have presented these on YouTube at times, most to the Defense Intelligence Agency. I make the DIA people laugh. There are 2 African-American women. One is for the Penic DOD and one is for DIA. That we laugh. I'm like, it's me, the alien guy. Oh, hi, John. How are you? What can I help you with? I get a guy named Andrew. Hi, Mr. Stewart, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I submitted a FOIA request about a document. He's like, hold on. Wow. I have never seen this before. I mean, how many times has that been said to me? I've never seen this before. Andrew, what have you never seen? Your name's on our computer. There's no file attached, like your request. I'm like, so big deal. He goes, John, he's Mr. Stewart. I've been here a while. I've never seen this before, ever. I'm like, wait, what are you telling me? He's like, well, like somebody would have to have gone in and removed your request. You can't get on this system. He's telling me this at the DIA, the FOIA department. Can't get on my system unless you have a corresponding file, and you don't have one. I'm like, oh, well, this is great. He's like, oh, don't worry. He goes, it's got to be something. He goes, it's bizarre, but it's, now my hands start shaking again. Yeah. I got the DOD. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. Also in Holden from Wright-Patterson, also in his text was, you are now, this made Rick Doty freaking, when I told him this, I had to peel him off the ceiling. You are now on a special watch list for your overseas emails, your frequent FOIA request, and the nature of your FOIA request. Rick Doty is like, this isn't Nazi Germany. You can't be on a special watch list. He goes, Doty flipped, this mild-mannered guy flipped his lid when I told him what I was told, that I'm on a Pentagon watch list, which I don't know if I believe or not, but who are you to have him write that to me? An hour later, after the FOIA, your file's missing, I get an email. Suddenly, they found my request. We cannot administer your request quickly, for the nature of your request requires us to speak with other agencies, cross-department meetings, and I've got this on the internet. And it might take several months. So they're going to have meetings now about my, the key card, the elevator going down, meetings about the used car dealer's FOIA request. Jeez. I call Andrew back at the DNI and he's this. Hello. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm like, Andrew, this is Jon Stewart. I just spoke to you an hour ago. I know. I'm like, oh, well, they just emailed me. He's like, yeah, they emailed you. I'm like, is there something wrong that did I do? He's like, no. I'm like, this happy, nice guy. And he's like, no. I'm like, okay, thanks for, helping me out. Hung up the phone. I'm like, what the f is going on with my life? Why is this hoax video producing all of this reaction? Again, I'm not declaring any statement. Why is this hoaxed video producing all of this reaction from senators to DIA to secret military people to Army intelligence people? What is going on? Why would they have this reaction to this supposed fake video? That is the question for the world of ufology to extrapolate.
Makes you wonder if it's not, like, let's just say the video is hoaxed, right? What else is going on behind the scenes that you're touching at, And I don't know, but it just makes you wonder, like, in a world of, sifting through half-truths all the time, is it possible that, yeah, this is hoaxed, but what you're doing, if you keep going, you're going to uncover something that they wish that video was real, and that's all you stopped at.
Right. It's Dr. Greer, tells everyone, including me, the truth of this phenomenon is more bizarre than aliens are coming to this planet. That scares me.
Yeah.
I'm just being, like real and telling you my feelings, which a lot of UFO researchers don't do. and I'm attacked for it. I don't care if Jon Stewart's happy or sensitive. Or, tell us the facts. Well, that's who I am. But yeah, so you're sitting back and going, well, and everyone's telling me, Don Schmidt, hide in the open, hide this stuff in the open. Well, before I started going on podcasts and having a couple of people pay attention to this, of course I was trying to make this into a documentary to tell the world what's going on. So that process is still ongoing. And it's like, well, it's that line from Clear and Present Danger. I'm afraid if I keep digging, nobody's going to like what I find, but I don't know what else, that the government, basically my thesis is the government of the United States in a facility south of Area 51 had a retention and interrogation program of off-planet beings and at times interdimensional beings. And I don't think that you can brush off that thesis anymore. There's just too many people coming forward. And again, my investigation, forget the film, forget me. I just asked, and I am not going to argue what my experiences were. I haven't made up anything of my experiences. So Jon Stewart doesn't argue that anymore. I'm telling the UFO world, find out why these people are going bat shit crazy. Why? And going to the point of threatening me. Why? Over a hoaxed video. I ran for governor. I wasn't a governor. I'm not in Congress. I'm a little guy from Chicago. None of this is making sense. None of this is making sense. And all of a sudden, when I'm calling congressmen and going to their offices about an alien retention program, all of a sudden David Grush shows up. I'm just saying, is that coincidence? Maybe. Or was it before this, crazy guy from Chicago gets really attraction, let's roll out this Grush guy. I believe that.
Let's give a controlled face to the narrative.
Well, of course, because, and again, I'm not saying that the government is on the internet following me, but I'm saying when I started going to congressmen's offices, handing the still photos and the investigation, that must have been the beep, beep, like what, because those phones are monitored and that telecommunication has been monitored and whatnot. And I think that did somehow, in my opinion, not fact, prompt, the Grush coming forward, who said the exact same thing that I told congressmen in the New York Times. The government has had an alien retention and interrogation program. And David Grush said that without naming the facility names and whatnot. I find that very suspect that when the 6-month window, when I started going to congressmen's offices and emailing, that Grush comes forward. Call it what you want. I don't know. That's my opinion.
That's wild. That is wild.
Yeah.
So in your gut, it seems like you feel like your efforts spawned a lot of stuff here.
I think, in my opinion, that exactly what the Pentagon told this guy to write me, the nature of my FOIA requests, my overseas emails, they went. And Linda Moulton-House says that happened. The same thing happened to her. They got her book, and her book was sitting on the middle of a conference table of generals and colonels, and they're like, "This is not good." And somebody might have gotten a notion, I think, with my seeing me on podcast, that this guy's not going to stop. And what am I doing that's illegal? You let the film sneak out.
Yeah.
You, the one that didn't come forward and say it was a hoax in 97. I come along in 2020 or 2019 and just simply ask people about it and start to prove the provenance and get all these visceral reactions. I'm in trouble. You're going to threaten my life? Not that it was. My life has ever been threatened. It hasn't. And I've never felt that it's ever been threatened. But, I have done nothing wrong except I've done nothing wrong. All I have done is ask people, qualified, intelligent people about the provenance of this film. And I want to get something on record here too. I've said this a couple of times. I am a proponent of the government. I believe in our military. I believe that 99% of the people in the military are honorable people that should be honored by us. And I am not castigating the government for keeping this crazy, ultra bizarre secret hidden from the public for all these years. Can you imagine thinking about telling the public about this? But now the cat is out of the bag. And all I am trying to do for my little part is to help the government come out of the closet. I coined that as far as the UFO phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to know every single secret that the government has? No, because I understand politically and geopolitically as a statesman that I don't want our enemies to have that.
Yeah.
We get that. I'm telling
Sure.
the government right now. We understand that. But to tell us that beings have traversed the galaxy or the dimensions and they've been coming to this planet and possibly that extraterrestrials coming to the planet have been the source code for all of our religions, and that bears out religion. That doesn't destroy religion. That's my view on that. And Reverend Michael Carter, who's part of my team, he's been on Ancient Aliens. He's an experiencer. He made a great point, and I'm going to wrap this up. Is that I'm sure we have questions, but he said we have to do something like happened in South Africa when Nelson Mandela took office, which was this exoneration of past misdeeds. The only way, and I know this is uncomfortable for people out there, the only way you are going to have generals and colonels and subcontractors and contractors and CEOs come forward to talk about the illegal money that was made and spent, the possible murders and cover up, is to exonerate everybody. As uncomfortable as that is the only way you're going to have this path to make a path in the field for these people to come forward to say, yes, I was part of this program. Yes, I covered it up. I'm sorry. And the American people will forgive them. And it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable for a single mother in Inglewood in the south side of Chicago to realize she's on food stamps. She doesn't have transportation for daycare or job. And we've spent $8 trillion in the past, 80 years studying tissue and making little spacecrafts. That's going to be a hard pill to swallow to people. Where my daughter's education in Indiana is $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
It's going to be a hard pill for me to swallow that we've spent all this money, you've kept it, and then you haven't, to some degree, used it for the betterment of society, only in a military application. I don't know.
But I do feel like we've been conditioned to assume as much anyways. At least for me,
Right.
I have a very cynical view, but like I look around and I know what they're telling me they're spending money on, and
Right.
I hate it.
Right.
Do I think that they're spending money on things that they're not telling about? Of course. 9/11 happened, and before 9/11 was 9/10. What they admitted there with the trillions of dollars that went missing.
Right.
Did it really go missing? Like, that's for another show, I'm sure. But like, there's a lot of times that we look at what they're doing, and it's like, yeah, I'm not buying it. So in reality, we're already conditioned to accept the fact that just come clean and do it, and so we can move forward.
So true.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
So true.
I think,
The American public is so forgiving, especially when you come clean with them.
yeah,
There'll be blowback. There are going to be some hard feelings, but again, I've been attacked because this has not been a gloom and doom. I'm the happiest I've ever been, Tony. I'm looking at you as my friend.
yeah.
I'm the happiest I've ever been in 56 years. For a guy that's done a lot, I've watched my children be born. I'm at the happiest level I've ever been. I can't really tell you the reason of that is, but this has not been, although it's been scary and bizarre at times, has not been doom and gloom. And I think possibly this is something like World War II that can bring the country together. Now we have a shared mission. We're on this small planet. We're going through the galaxy, at 1,000 miles an hour, and we're all in this together. Could that be the message? And could that be something that we take? Because we're a society that bashes people over the head on Black Friday for a $10 toaster.
It's true.
We have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Maybe this is something that just clears the path for us to say there's something bigger out there, and we need to be part of this galactic community, embrace these galactic brothers and sisters of ours. And I truly believe in the American people, and I'm not running for president. I truly believe in the American people that this coming out properly might bring the country together.
Wow. Well, it's a very inspiring statement that you have been sharing here. And, I think you're really on to some very interesting things. I think that what you're doing, you've made so much headway, and the process, you just shared is just, I almost feel like you're mid journey. This
Yeah.
is this story is not done. It
No.
is not written,
No.
and I'm excited to see where you go forward from here. Do you have any sense of direction moving forward? I mean, I know you're going to the congressman's office today, right?
Yes.
And so you're doing a lot of different things. It seems like you're still very much boots on the ground, leg work. What is, I guess maybe, do you have any plans moving forward as to, okay, I'm in Knoxville now, and this is my plan, my next 6-month plan on how to advance.
I told people, they're like, well, write a book. I'm like, the story's not done yet.
Yeah.
So I'm impressed that you actually said that verbiage. Getting this on the record for Congress. Jon Stewart of Deerfield, Illinois, has presented his investigation in a Project Aquarius, and letting that start with the Timber Shuts, like, we're going to have to overturn tables in the Pentagon because Tim, Congressman, here's the program. I told you.
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Here's the project name. Here's the program name. Here's the facility names. Here's where this program is being conducted out. You don't have to turn over tables. I'm giving you this information.
Yeah.
So to get this on record and to get it firmly established of what has taken place in the past with government, to also try and with some politicians to be on a bipartisan committee of citizen, politician, military, of again doing what they did in South Africa, of this exonerating people and going through the process of coming clean with the American people and the world, and exonerating, and actually find out what took place, how much money was spent, and just wiping the books clean. I see myself as part of that. I think my political background has prepped me for that, to be part of that. And lastly, there are so many still witnesses that I still are on my list that I still haven't, talked to. A couple of more people that claimed to have been an S4 a security guard, who I'm starting to get weird information about, and where people say he was a hoaxer, and I'm getting a little bit of a different vibe from my information, and some of the other relatives of some of these people that I still have to interview. And of course, once we get money, funding, trying to recreate that bean to see if it could have been done in 1996.
Yeah.
On top of that, mapping out the entire story for the world, on a documentary and in a book, or, I am not, and I never will. You can take this to the bank. One of those UFO guys that's going to keep the bombshells, which we still have to get to before I leave, within me. This is going to be released. I'm not going to. I hated that when I was when I was in the UFO world, or observer, and people, you wouldn't ever get the answer, and they would hold on to it. It's coming. It's coming. No, it's coming. If I have to go on a show and just spell it all out, give all the names, it's coming. The only thing I'm worried about is CNN trucks showing you these doctors and these people in military that are still alive. And I think I'm not remiss in that. And I think that's not. I think that's a plausible thing that I have to think about. I'm still going to release the names, but do we go to them with lawyers and say, we're releasing your name?
What's the respectable professional way to go about it?
That's it. Because I'm an investigative reporter, but I'm not a journalist. I'm not a TV guy or a person that's a professional investigator.
You're not trying to build a name for yourself as a journalist for your boss for the next promotion.
No,
you're
I'm not.
Independent. And so you're not trying to harm people to get your next position in life.
And people roll their eyes when I say that. I'm like, I'm serious. If that camera crew showed up to that doctor's office,
awful.
I would feel like shit.
I would feel awful.
I would feel awful.
I'm a very similar situation.
Okay,
with some
good.
Things I'm working on.
So I'm speaking with kindred spirits. So let me give the last bombshell, just in case we're running. You want to ask a question, whatever.
Sure.
So Linda Moulton Howe has been like a muse to me, meaning like she has said and done things on her documentary, or sent me things that oh my God, wait a minute. So I never could figure out what 27 is. Now remember, the Rear Admiral that I named was Colin Powell's chief liaison for intelligence, was in the Oval Office. My wife's sleeping. I'm in bed watching my 600th documentary. This poor woman, 3 a.m. I just watch documentaries about ufology just to find out. It's a Lyndon Moulton Howe documentary about Ronald Reagan being briefed in 1980 about the extraterrestrial phenomenon. Above each page of the briefing, Tony, is the number 27. And I kind of sit up in bed. I'm like, I wake up my wife. I said, Joanne, look, 27 is on the top of those Ronald Reagan briefings. She's like, yeah. I'm like, 27 is the thing on the bottom of the film, the Victor film. I don't know what it is. And she's like, well, who's that guy? I'm like, Rick Doty. She's like, ask Rick tomorrow. I'm like, okay, right. Why? I never even thought, because Victor said it's a cataloging number. Don't worry about it. Yeah, right. So I call up Doty. This was out of a movie. I'm like, Rick, what's 27? Oh, you mean like in the military? Yeah, in the military. I'm almost like pissed that he hasn't he's like, well, that's Yankee White. I'm like, what? He goes, it's the security designation Yankee White. What's Yankee White? I'm being a little snarky with him. He's like, well, Yankee White is the security umbrella designation for anyone that deals with the president and briefs the president. I'm like, unpack that for me. He's like, John, if I was going to hand you documents and on the document, it said 27 or Yankee White, but it would say 27. And if you didn't have that clearance of Yankee White, you'd have fold that packet, pass it back. You could not access it. Same with film, same with anything. I said, and Doty is charming because he doesn't really know that much about the victim. You think Doty would know every nuance? He doesn't. It's like me. Why doesn't Jon Stewart remember a match from 1990? It's not important to me. It's rote. I said, it's on the bottom of the Victor film. He's like, it is? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, that means that somebody in that room, this is Rick Doty, doesn't know anything about that it was on there. He's like, I would extrapolate that meant that somebody in that room or that portion of that film was being shown to somebody who was then going to brief the president of the United States. I said, have you ever heard of Admiral Schaefer? He said, no. I said, he's Navy. He's like, well, no, I don't think I've ever remember hearing about him. I said, this DIA report that I got from the chairman, of course, I told Rick about the report. I said, he was the Joint Chiefs liaison for intelligence for Colin Powell. I know he was in the Oval Office. He's like, well, that's why you're seeing 27 on that film. I'm like, is a screenwriter in 1996 in a strip mall video production company gonna know what 27 Yankee White security is?
No.
And then put on the liaison for the Joint Chiefs? Folks, come on.
Yeah.
So, that was, to me, that was it. That was, I'm like, this is, I can't go on declaratively and say this is all real. But boy, oh boy, if it isn't, this is the most convoluted 30-year hoax involving 30 people. A senator is communicating with a screenwriter, is communicating with an admiral and a vice admiral that knows that this was a hoax and to ghost me, and an 85-year-old widow woman. Come on.
Yeah.
What's Occam's razor? That it was a real video of an interrogation. I like to call it Q&A because interrogation is so negative. A Q&A of an off-planet beating. Come on. And the 27 was just the icing on the cake.
That's
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
So I find an email from the project director of Aquarius. His name is Thomas Mack. In this email to another person from 99, he writes, find Rick Doty. He was our counterintelligence agent for Project Aquarius. He's a New Albuquerque state trooper. Dan Burrish was part of our project too, the guy that everybody says is crazy. And I could have a lot of information that could embarrass the government. And in 2000, he's dead of a brain hemorrhage. Not drawing any conclusion. Supposedly his family said that there's hemorrhagic stroke hereditary in their family. So about 3 months ago, Linda Moulton Howe gives me part of a manual that is given, this is on the internet, given to people who retrieve craft. And also in part of this manual or this one document, it gives the classifications of ETs, where they might come from, this and that. This is weird stuff. Good investigative, interesting stuff. So I see, as far as the gray aliens, I see a designation, NAPC, something, NA, I can't, but it was BBS. And it triggered me. I said, where have I seen BBS before? This is an alien document. Linda Howe got this from a military person. Where have I seen BBS? I know there was BBS rims in the 80s. I'm just, I'm like, wait a minute. The personal email of Tom Mack, the project manager of Aquarius, who wrote a Rick, I forget his name, a personal, an investigator. The Project Aquarius's personal email has BBS snowman at AOL or so old Expedia or whatever on his email. So here is somebody probably subconsciously using coding from his military background in his own personal email. Is that have I did the case cracked or no? Case cracker? No, but it's just another bizarre, a linkage that something is going on here.
Yeah.
All the buttons are being plugged into other buttons, and there's no red lights going on. It's all green light on the board, meaning this is all jiving. It's just bizarre. And for me, makes me feel like I'm in a Tom Clancy novel when I'm discovering and I'm going back and I'm going through documents and with my ADD and it's exciting, but it's when I think about the larger implications of this great lie and the greatest cover up in human history, as I call it, it does make me pause. But I said, I think we're going to come through this. I just don't think that this is something that we need to draw our attention to this, the American people in the world, and we can do it.
No, I absolutely agree. And as we wrap up here, I would highly encourage anybody listening to this that might have stumbled across this YouTube video or this podcast feed that might have information, they should reach out to you. They should be brave,
right,
and take the step that so many others haven't.
Right.
And inform and give the information that you have, because the information's coming. I mean, just read the room. I mean, the last 5 years, it's just exploded. The information's out there and it is coming. And if you don't get ahead of it, you might, at the end of the day, wish you would have.
Yeah.
And so I would just highly encourage people that are listening, if you have that information, please go ahead and contact Jon. You can come in studio too. I'll bring Jon back in. We'll have
There we go.
We have a round table discussion and stuff.
Yeah, let me give you my email. It's a JON, without the H, Alan, ALAN, STEWART at AOL.com. Folks, I've done this on purpose. Not that there's anything wrong with it, and not saying that this might not be my future, but just so I could escape the criticism of some people, I have not monetized my investigation at this point. I don't have a channel that's monetized. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, so people can't come to me and say, "Oh, this is another fast buck horror of the UFO world." No, that is not it at all. So when people laugh at me, like, I've got a crappy website that's under construction, a YouTube channel called Hunting Victor Documentary that's got a couple of videos on it, but I want to have the monetary issue of this off the table, until we proceed to a documentary. Yeah. But for 5 years, I've not put a dime in my pocket, and this has probably cost me up to $20,000 so far, as far as travel and getting a special effects person to analyze the film. And I'm way past probably $20,000. So I'm very proud that I haven't put anything in my pocket as of right now, 5 years. And this has been a pure investigative journalistic approach. And I'm proud of that.
Your wife's like, man, my husband fell into a very expensive hobby.
Yeah. She's like, when guys are 50 and they have a midlife crisis, they go get a Corvette. My husband goes and searches for aliens.
Yeah. And it turns out he's finding them. Well, Jon, listen, I appreciate you coming in and sharing your story from beginning to end. I hope that this was good for you, because I feel like it was a
great.
fantastic way to present this story.
Yeah.
And like I said to you when we first connected, I feel like my audience is tailored for this. We have a lot of people who listen to the show to hear people's life stories with this kind of stuff, and you fit the bill. And it's very timely. This is something that we're not looking back on and saying, oh, this is Jon's story that happened 20 years ago. We're in the middle of it right now. Right. And so the listening audience understand that this is a story that is not finished being written, and you can be part of the story as well by sharing this information worldwide. Get it out to everybody, because the more you share the links to this stuff, the more opportunity it has to get in front of the right eyes, the right ears that have the information that Jon needs to crack the case. So please, if you found this information very informative, which I already know you have, if you're here this long, I think Jack probably, how long have we been recording? Like 3 hours? So 3 hours. If you're still here, it's because you want to be here. So right. Please, at this point, share the link, share it with people, and let them know the truth of the matter of this investigation. And Jon, I appreciate you being here, man.
Thank you, pal. Appreciate it very much. Really, I really do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Been a pleasure.
They say I'm on a spectrum.